Our big point. Each of them help us. But I mean, largely, they got it. So YouTube is live. I just can drop that down. I like to keep this here. I'm keeping the participants up just because I want to be able to see if someone's trying to get in, because I'm not going to have to wait to see it otherwise, especially if you know if it's going to be back and forth here. I can't get my, I believe I participated. Public safety starts. If someone appears late, we should have to make that in and all of that. So it just, it helps bring sort of. Public safety personnel. Finance. So I think it's an equitable. We do have Joe and Kim are here remotely. John Paul that he said he will not be present for tonight's meeting. Yep, they're on. So when you're ready to call the order, we can start with public safety and get this rolling.
All right. Public safety meeting of the whole.
No, just regular public safety.
Public safety meeting will be called to order 6:00 p.m. on the 26th.
Like you do the roll call.
Roll call, please.
Alderperson Michael Schmidt,
Here.
Alderperson Kenneth Newman,
Present.
Alderperson Kim Olson.
Here.
Yeah, the form.
Pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge of allegiance
to the flag, United States
of America, to the republic, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, approval of the May 22nd Public Safety Committee meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the May 22nd, 23 meeting.
Item number 4, citizen comments.
I'm sorry, are all three in approval?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Take the vote.
I thought we had them all.
We need you to, is everyone in agreement? Yep.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. Now, item number 4, citizen comments. Anybody have any comments?
Is this for the public safety meeting?
Public safety, yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, public works after this.
It will be fourth, but yes, we have citizens' comments for each of the committees tonight.
Hearing none. We will go to the monthly EMS report.
Hi, everyone. It's Christine. Hopefully I'm outside, so if it's too loud, let me know with the wind. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, great. All right, so for EMS, we continue to be, you hear our sirens all the time. We continue to be very busy. We're tracking with last year. We're about 30 calls for service ahead of where we were last year. So we expect to be at where we were last year or a little ahead, probably, the way things are going lately. For number 2, staffing update, we continue to be very happy with our staff. Our numbers look very good. We did have one EMT that really wasn't active with us for quite a while that had moved out of the area. So we did lose one, but our new people are fantastic. They're all are released from their training and doing fantastic things for the city of Mayville. So we're very happy with them. Julie's going to cover our training.
Hello, everyone. So for this month, it's kind of an exciting training. We have some new stair chairs that we were able to purchase that are going to make it not make it easy, but easier on our people because they do have batteries that will help get patients in and out of the house with stairs a lot easier. So we're going to be training on that with our Furno rep on Wednesday. And then we pretty much have everybody renewed for 2026. Super proud of all of our people, just have a few people that we're just finishing up on. So we will be ready to go for our license renewal for the next 3 years. And that's all I have.
And
thank
so then
you, Julie.
the next thing we have is our fundraising and equipment. Julie mentioned the stair chairs. We were able to purchase those with the funding that we received from the ARPA funds from the state of Wisconsin. So those were paid for 100% without having to expend any city dollars. There were no match funds on that. Also, we want to remind everyone, we have our golf outing coming up here now at the end of July. So we are still looking for donations for anybody that wants to donate for baskets or raffles for that, and also looking for teams. So you can get a hold of Julie if you're looking to participate. We've got Barb and Nick that are kind of spearheading that event for us. And then under miscellaneous, we just want to mention again that we're always interested in licensed EMTs or nurses or doctors that are interested in becoming part of our team. And also that, Julie, if you want to just mention real quick about your classes that are coming up.
Yep. So for those of you that I know are newer on the board, this will be our 4th EMT basic class that we're going to be offering. We have been very blessed to get some amazing people out of these classes. It's really done our city and the surrounding communities. It's been great. So this year we're changing things a little bit different. We are still doing an EMT basic class. However, for example, Mayville is an advanced EMT class. So advanced EMT service. So what that is that means we can do a little bit higher level meds. We can start IVs, give fluids. So we are going to be offering an advanced EMT class in February. This is a big step for us. I have some awesome instructors, and we're hoping to get some awesome people out of that. A few of our EMT students from the last couple of classes have reached out and want to be in that class. So we're hoping to get some great EMTs out of there. So just really excited for this next chapter.
That's all we have from EMS.
Thank you.
Item number 6, monthly fire department report.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We'll start with equipment first. John, we'll go over that real quick. Good evening. How are you tonight? Last week we had all our yearly PMs and DOT certifications on all our trucks. Anything that was major, we fixed right away. There are still a few deep deficiencies on every unit. With 64, which is our oldest unit, the AC unit went down, so I'm going to have to go to outside vendors. Our repair guy can't fix that, so I don't know what that's going to entail. We did start the lift cylinder cycle. We had one sent out, it's done now, so that'll be coming back. So we have 3 more cylinders that need to be switched out. Instead of buying all new, we bought one, and we're pulling one, putting a new one in, send it out to get rebuilt, and then we'll use it, and then we'll have an extra. When it's all done, then we'll have a spare. which is a lot cheaper than buying 6 new lift phones. So, ladder truck, it passed its PMs and DOT. We did find some hydraulic leaks, which we have to get hoses made up. The next time he's here, he'll take care of that. Steve's truck didn't have any issues. We did have to change the 13 belt on 83. It jumped, it's a 6 groove belt and it only had 4 grooves left. It chewed up a couple of the grooves, so that is done now. For the station, or for yearly stuff, the SCBA flow test will be in July. That's when they take all our air packs and they put it on a device and it runs it through a test to make sure they're working properly. If they're not, they repair them on site. If they can't fix them on site, they take them back with them. Usually if they take them back with them, it's warranty. And then the SCBA compressor is due in July also. Any questions on equipment? It's becoming old. I'm running into problems finding lights and we have to upgrade.
And I want to address that real quick, John, stay up here if you can. I know the council members, a lot of you are new, some of you are familiar faces, Ken obviously being on the fire department. I'm hoping that all of you here, and I know Kim, you're on through Skype, are willing to work with the fire department. I invite you to come down to work with the fire department. It's unfortunate that the council members in the past never took the opportunity to come down and see what's happening in the fire department. We have a lot of issues that have been pushed under the rug concerning our equipment for 20 years. Enough's enough. It's getting tiring coming before council, hearing when a mayor wants to be elected, how they are gonna replace our equipment, they're gonna work with us, and as soon as they get elected, oh, nope, we're gonna cut back. It costs money to have public service in Mayville. That's unfortunate, but it's a fact. Nothing's free. The city's been very fortunate for over 100 years. We volunteers were not paid for over 100 years. Well, days are done. You guys are gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do for personnel and what you're gonna do for equipment. That's above my pay grade and I don't make those decisions. The other concern that we have, like John said, if you hear everything that he says, when they talk about deficiencies, they have to special order it. Anybody know what that means in layman's terms as far as cost? Special order, a lot of money. We're spending a huge portion of our budget on repairs for equipment that should have been replaced. Little background on equipment for NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Agency, and there's several standards, which again, it's not law, you're gonna hear it's not law. But when cases do go to court, this is what they use to determine the law and to determine the cases, is NFPA. NFPA states that equipment should be replaced every 25 years. We're past the lifespan on almost all of our equipment. We have not bought a new piece of apparatus in 21 years. That's terrible. I'm sure, and I'm not saying anything about any other department, but I'm sure their equipment's a little bit more updated. And I was told by a past council member after their departure that we are considered the redheaded stepchild of Mayville. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. I didn't find it comical at all. I was insulted that we give our time volunteering to protect this community, but yet we don't have a reciprocal agreement with the council. We need to work together, you guys. I'm begging you, start working with the fire department before it's too late. We're getting to a point where this downward spiral, you're not gonna recover from. We've had several, and I don't know if any of you recall it, but we've had several opportunities where we could create a replacement schedule. They just swept it under the rug. They won't do it. We have to start taking action. Budget season's coming up. Let's work together. Please come down. Please visit with us. Any questions about that?
So you mentioned 25 years is kind of the recommend, and I know you guys done a phenomenal job of maintaining what we got, so kudos to you guys and they can do it. Can we buy used equipment that moves us the right direction from fire department?
For sure. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, We had the opportunity to buy a ladder truck, aerial truck, platform, whatever you want to call it. This came up 12, 13 years ago before I was chief. I was still in the fire department. That we want to get a new ladder truck. Citizen voice are concerned because it was $1 million. Well, obviously inflation eats up, and now that same ladder truck is $1.8 million. We had an opportunity a couple of years ago. We had it all set. There was a demo unit, I think they called it, that went around. It would have less than 15,000 miles on it. We can get it for $900,000. Never made it to council because whoever was head of the finance committee decided not to put it on the capital improvement budget. Never made it to council. We were told that if something's turned down twice on capital improvement budget, it has to go before the council on the third time. That's never happened either. We brought it up every single budget cycle that we need to start replacing our equipment. So we're fine. You have, if that's where we need to start, it's better than sticking these firefighters in 33-year-old pieces of equipment and going, oh, I hope it doesn't break or something happen, because now that you know about it, you know the concerns that we have. The other issue that we have is I don't know if the ladder truck's going to survive its next test. What is that test called? The destruction.
The destructive test is gonna be in August, it's every 5 years.
And basically they put it through very strenuous testing to make sure if somebody's up in the bucket, because they're not just used to go up to the side of a building, they're used for many other things. We can get into that if you come down and visit. I'm not 100% sure it's going to pass. And unfortunately, every time they come to fix one problem with the ladder truck, they find 3 more. And it's got to the point where he said, the repair company is saying, we're not really comfortable repairing this anymore. It's getting past that point where the life expectancy is past. There were some rumors that, oh, we'll just get a new engine and put it in there. The fire engine age is like a house age. It's determined by the basement. It's the oldest piece. Chassis would have to be replaced. You're still talking a casting engine, $1 million. So we have to start working together and figure out a solution. I have lots of input. I'm just not the one that can make the solution happen. I can help guide you and give you whatever you need, but we have to start taking action to move forward.
I'm assuming you have a priority on what equipment is replaced first.
We go by age. Our oldest one is a 1991, just for comparison. I was a freshman in college, just to put that in perspective how old it is. And I don't think, were the Backstreet Boys popular then? I don't think they were even a thing yet. Were they in 91? That's how old this thing is.
I was in college then too.
Yeah, I don't think Backstreet Boys were popular. Our 2964 is our oldest engine. That is a 1998. That's 25 years right now. 2963 is a 2000. That's 23 years old. And 2965 is a 2004. Our command vehicle, which is 2983, is a 2000. The only reason why that got replaced, we had a fire at our station. It burned up our 1999. And we got 1 year newer. It didn't cost the city anything. Exactly what we got from the insurance, we paid for the new one. So
Used one.
yeah, used one. We didn't get a new one. The chief's vehicle, which is what I first go to on scene, that's a 2006 pickup truck. So our equipment is old. We just need to move forward. I'm begging you guys to work with us. Begging you guys. I'm begging comptrollers, clerks, deputy clerks, when we need information, please help us as much as you can, because we have to, for the good of the entire city, not just our department. It's for the good of the entire city that we start replacing those stuff. Unfortunately, they didn't buy it every 5 years, which they could. We have 5 pieces of equipment. You can simply budget it every 5 years to replace a piece, and it takes care of itself. At the end of the 25 years, that piece is due, you replace it. It's just simple. Nobody ever did that. But I've got it all spelled out. I have tons replacement schedules from the past that I handed to the council that were never acted upon. So, but I can get that for you if you'd like.
I think that'd be helpful.
Can definitely do that. I'll have it for the next meeting. Thank you. I'm sure. Any questions about the equipment? Okay, we'll move on to personnel. We're currently at 19 members. Our newest member, who's only been on a few months, they only schedule classes in the fall and spring. He was hired too late in the spring, so he's scheduled to start this fall semester at Moraine Park. He'll be in firefighter 1 and hazmat. We also have other members enrolled in driver operator comfort class and another one enrolled in fire officer 1 class. We We have 3 members who are just recently became certified as firefighter 2. 1 member who just became certified as emergency service instructor 1. 1 member that's certified as driver operator pumper, and the same gentleman certified as aerial operator. Those are huge accomplishments, So at this point, of the 19 members, we have 18 that are certified firefighter 1s. And we have 13 that are certified firefighter 2s. As soon as Tanner's done, our newest firefighter, we'll be up to 14 out of 19 are certified firefighter 1 or firefighter 2s. Any questions about that? Okay, along those same lines, I received some wonderful news a month and a half ago. Jack, you probably remember, we just had the 2% dues audit. I was explaining how intense that was, and I spent a few months trying to get everything ready for our 2% dues. Long story short, for the council members that aren't aware, 2% dues are 2% of the fire insurance that's collected. The insurance companies give to the fire departments if you perform fire inspection, public safety, it's a whole list of stuff. And that's a big chunk of money. We'll be getting that check, Anna, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and it's usually $15,000 to $18,000 that we get for basically doing our job. So it's huge. We just passed that audit. I was thankful, no more audits. A week later, I got a audit notice from the insurance services office. This is an intense one. I have worked a lot of hours. I finished most of it today. I'm meeting with them on July 13th to meet in person and verify all the data that I gave them. So we'll be down at the station. They still need to talk to the mayor about whatever they do, and they also need to talk to the water department, but hopefully we'll get through this audit. This is what sets the fire rates when insurance companies set their fire rates. The lower your number, which the highest we can get is a 3 for the first time ever. The last time we had this audit, we achieved a 3. So that brings down the insurance rates overall. Especially attractive to commercial because it really impacts commercial business. So it's good for our tax base also to attract businesses. So, and it's can go way higher, but we've always historically been around an 8, but since I thought we'd have a 3, so we'll hopefully get a 3 again. So, I'll be done hopefully July 13th, and I probably won't find anything till middle of the fall, maybe late fall. It will impact it starting next year. So, questions about the equipment, personnel, or any of the audits? All right, thank you guys for letting me talk about that. And Mike, if you want to finish up my calls.
Good evening. As of year to date, we're at 46 fire calls, and that puts us on pace for 96 at this time or more, which is considerably more than what we, if you go back 5 years where we were at, we've been increasing every year. Puts us at 8 calls since the last meeting. 3 of these calls were related to an oil spill and containment that had happened in town. 2 of our calls were for Mavis, which is the mutual aid box alarm system, which is other departments requested our help. One was a RIT, which is a rapid intervention team, which is our members are trained for extrication of firefighters if they get in trouble. So they're always on standby. One was for a chief and one was for an aerial that was called out for a fire for a local community. 2 for EMS assist, and then we had 1 vehicle fire. Very nice. Any questions on fire calls? All right. Last but not least, on behalf of the fire department, I want to say thank you to the council members that stepped up when you needed to. We appreciate it. We look forward to having a very positive working relationship with you guys. If you ever need anything, our doors always open. We're a phone call away. Just stop down. We'll take care of it. And you know that we're on the fire department for another year. So awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mike.
Item number 7. Anybody have questions about that? No. Item number 7, police department.
I know Chief Tolner is out of town. No one sent me any report to read on their behalf, so it appears they do not have anything for this meeting.
Okay. Items of discussion for possible action. Discuss with possible action and amendment to municipal code section 430.25. Accessory uses and detached accessory structures, to modify the language to read that detached garages must be serviced by a driveway. Eliminate the requirement for shed 430-25B and increase the allowable square footage of sheds to 200 square feet, 430-25C.
This was added by Alderman Tillman, who is present via Zoom.
So the reason I added this is I attended the my first zoning review meeting several weeks ago. And we denied a request for a shed of 200 square feet, which would exceed the 144 permitted by the current ordinance. And also there was a request to eliminate the driveway. So these have been approved historically erroneously by the zoning review board. In conversation with the applicant and some other members of the zoning board, I decided that we should pose an amendment to the code to just permit this as opposed to approving it every time someone files for a variance request. I don't have the rework written yet, but my proposal would be to specifically call out a maximum square footage of 624 square feet for detached garages and 200 square feet for sheds. And then, like as it mentioned in the introduction there, that we would eliminate the requirement for a driveway to the shed.
I have a question. Why did this begin with, I guess? Why did they want a driveway? Does anybody know the answer to that?
So during the zoning meeting, Rob Froh made a comment that at some point there was a concern about people using these for illegal, businesses, I guess.
Okay,
I'm not really sure why the requirement for a driveway would prohibit that or would deter that, because it seems to me that it would be the opposite. But I mean, I've looked at like 20 different municipalities and I've worked for others, and nobody has a requirement for a driveway to a shed. I mean, I don't even understand the purpose of that. So I just think my opinion is that we, because this has been approved time after time after time by the board, in my reading, they shouldn't have been approved because there really were no circumstances that made the appeal such that they should have been approved by the board. I think we should just amend it to allow it because it's been allowed historically. And then address the detached garages separately and maintain the requirement for the driveway to the detached garage.
makes sense to me.
And I am willing to, if this were to be passed on to council, I'm willing to sit down over the next couple of weeks and rewrite the ordinance, that it's a little more clear and a little more updated, because the way that it's worded now is very strange and it's actually a little confusing. So I think we could clear it up and then just still permit people to get the things they were getting, but without making them go through the zoning review process.
Is the fire department still with us?
No, they've stepped out.
Oh, okay, Julie and Christine, I'm thinking of our services. Do you see any problem with amending this?
I have a couple of questions here before we go further.
Okay,
So the shed intuitively increasing that 200 square feet, it kind of makes sense to me. If we have a history of approving that. I don't know that I understand the rationale of stipulating that a garage must have a driveway. If it hasn't been a problem in the past, why do we need to change it?
So garages have always required a driveway. So the way that it's worded now is that any accessory structure over 144 square feet does require a driveway. So that would include, I mean, you're not gonna have a garage smaller than that. But the way that it's worded now is such that if your shed exceeds that, you would be required to have a driveway to the shed as well. So this wouldn't really change anything with regards to garages, aside from putting like maximum square footage on it. And my rationale for the 624 square feet is that's a typical 2.5 car garage.
So if I'm allowed, I'll answer for Kim, Christine Churchill. I don't see a problem with not having a driveway to a shed or to another building, because we respond to those types of calls all the time. Especially now when we live in a world where we have so many UTVs at our beck and call, and we have, you know, even if a yard was muddy or something. I mean, we do deal with these types of calls in a rural environment all the time that don't have driveways. You know, we respond to a field or to a recreational area, and there's not a driveway, and we have equipment that can help us facilitate any emergency responses that we need. So that's just my 2 cents.
And if that's not a problem for you or the fire department, I don't see a problem with an amendment to this. That's my opinion. So at this point, do we want to vote on this tonight or move it to council?
I'm not prepared to vote on it tonight.
Did you
Right.
say,
I don't know that we could vote tonight because I mean, I really haven't written the actual amendment. This was just kind of, I guess I wanted to start it here. And then if there's an agreement that this is acceptable, move it to council, put it on the next agenda for the council meeting. And I will, at that, prior to that, I will rewrite this ordinance and I will provide a copy to Anastasia to deliver to everyone so that we've got it in advance and you can all review it.
Yeah, I think at this time, the options would be to table it to another month here at committee level, or to move it to council, or withdraw it entirely. And it would just be the 3 people who are on this committee who would take that action. 'Cause it's not a whole.
I have a question if I'm allowed. Just to be clear, anything over 144 square feet will require a driveway.
No, that's what the ordinance reads now. It's, if you were to read it, it's actually pretty confusing because for example, the variance request that we heard was, he was requesting, that the driveway not be required, for this 200 square foot shed, okay? The variance request should have actually included, a request to exceed the 144 square feet that was permitted for a shed to begin with. But because the code as it reads is very confusing, I think there was a misunderstanding of it. And I think there's even if we weren't going to address it in the fashion that I would like to, I think it's got to be addressed because it's written very poorly. I mean, and this is my daily job. I read code all day long. I've written ordinance. It should really be brushed up at the very least. But my request would be that we would eliminate the need for a driveway to the shed and maintain the requirement for a driveway to a detached. Obviously, because there we're driving vehicles in and out.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. Thanks.
Are you gonna rewrite that then?
Yeah, if you guys are willing to move this to council, and before the next council meeting, I will rewrite it and I will provide everyone a copy via Anastasia.
How about we just table it?
I want to do that. I want to make a motion to table and then have Alderman Tillman draft up with new language and then go from there.
So table to the next finance committee.
Correct. And then we'll bring it to council once we see the language and everything's where it should be.
Okay. We got a motion.
I'm sorry, yes, public safety. I'm getting ahead of myself.
For all gentlemen to rewrite this thing and bring it to the next.
Correct. Just a motion to table.
Yeah, okay, and I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
So be it. That it?
motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Hi, girl.
I'll second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, next is personnel. Still you, Alderperson Schmidt.
Well, for order, the personnel meeting of the whole, I believe this is. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Michael Schmidt,
Here.
Alderperson Ken Newman,
Here.
Alderperson Roger Smith,
Here.
Alderperson Jack Abbott,
Here.
Alderperson Joseph Tillman,
Here,
Alderperson Kim Olson.
Here.
Form,
Item number 2, approval of the minutes. May 22nd, 2023 Personnel Committee meetings. Minutes rather, and approval of the May 30th, 2023 Special Personnel Committee of the whole minutes.
I make a motion to approve item 1 and 2.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any questions about that? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
aye.
Item number 3, citizen comments. This is for Personnel Committee. Hearing none. Items of discussion for possible action, update on status of applicants for the comptroller treasurer opening.
I just wanted to let you guys know where we're at because you had agreed to list on Indeed for a month. We have had 21 applicants. None of them have a background in municipal accounting or really municipal work at all. There may be 1 or 2 that have a kind of varied accounting background that might parlay. You guys would have to interview and find out. But I guess I just wanted to let you know that the Indeed route has not been bringing in people with the skill set that is requested in the job description. That's where we're at so far.
Anybody have any comments or questions about that? All there?
What other choices do we have?
I did send an email, that I'd gotten from the one headhunter. There are services out there like that. I don't know all of them by any means, but we do see some of them reaching out. I'm sorry to interrupt, Alderman Tillman.
I was gonna say, I did mention to Anastasia when I was at City Hall a couple of weeks ago that I do think it would be a benefit to post on a site like governmentjobs.com. I think it's $199 for a 6-month posting there. And if we post on a site that specializes in government jobs, we're gonna find people that are looking for a job in government because the pay is probably not comparable to what it might be in the private sector. But you're gonna find people that are looking for a job that has the benefits and the stability of a municipal position. I don't know that Indeed or any of those other sites are going to be particularly effective in finding somebody who's looking to be in a position like that.
We are also listed on the League of Municipalities website, and we haven't gotten much traction out of that either. But I can say just from looking at their site, there appears to be many municipalities who are in the same boat as us right now, so.
And I know a lot of places use the league website, but I don't think people are very aware that it exists. So you're probably not going to see a ton of traffic there. Where like with governmentjobs.com, I mean, that's kind of a landing spot for anybody looking for a job in municipal or state government.
Jack,
Bill,
go ahead.
what was the one I suggested to last, our last meeting?
I think that was HR Gov.
And you just answered my question. So that was my question.
Because HR Gov was, I think it was, I didn't look into it. I should have looked into it. $30, maybe a month. I'd have to check, but those, all two good options right there to go that route versus the Indeed route. We tried the Indeed route because we were stuck behind them, pickle.
Yep.
But I think that we should go, more targeted, obviously professionals that are looking for that. I mean, I was in broadcasting for a long time and I didn't look at Indeed for radio jobs. They have their own, genre, so.
And we are a meeting of the whole, so if you guys want to make any decisions and indeed pursue some of these other ones at, certain dollar amounts. Let me know.
Did you get any prices from any of these so-called headhunters?
No, a lot of them said they want to come present and would not give me a price rate.
They want what?
They want to come present,
Present their,
and it depends on the services. I did get a response from Mayor Gwynn to that email, and he said historically what he has seen is 20 to 30% is what they want. I don't have any of that information to be able to verify, so I am unsure.
20 to 30% of the first year salary.
I believe so.
Sounds about right. So that makes $30 for HR Go sound pretty cheap. So is there anything to prevent us from trying both of those?
so,
Well, just us voting on
That's
it.
up to you guys.
anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
You'll make a motion?
to list the comptroller treasurer job on HR Gov. And what was the,
governmentjobs.com.
okay. You said that was $200? Which one did you say was $200?
The listing on governmentjobs.com, I believe, was $199, and that's for 6 months.
6 months. That's
We got
more than worth it.
Did you also want
You can add
the
that.
Indeed ended?
Yeah, I think we could pull that as well, seeing as though we haven't really gotten anything that,
Second motion.
Then moved and seconded to move those applications to the HR.
Both sites.
Governmentjobs.com, both sites. All in favor?
Aye.
and then money was supposed to go on it, I don't know.
Do you want to take a vote?
Absolutely can do roll, yep.
All right, take a roll.
Alderperson Abbott,
Aye.
Alderperson Smith,
Yes.
Alderperson Newman,
Aye.
Alderperson Schmidt,
Aye.
Alderperson Olson,
Aye.
Alderperson Tillman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item number 2 is possible action recruitment options, but that's the same thing, isn't
We handled
Just
it
took care
above.
of it.
it? Yeah, just took care of it. Skip 2. Discuss with, item number 3, discuss with possible action adopting a code of conduct for elected officials.
I'll take the floor on this one. It's something that's been,
Roger, I can't understand you.
this is something, I'll take the floor on this one. This has been something percolating for quite some time. We've had a couple of incidences in the past of how elected officials are treating employees. One of them had the integrity to step down, and he's still with us. And I think it's important that we have a code of conduct where we can hold one another accountable. I would expect that if I was out of line, that I would be held accountable. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to level set and make sure that we don't have incidences like this in the future. I've got 3 different ones attached here. The one that I think makes the most sense is the one from Green Bay. I think it covers the ground very well. I'm not anticipating that everybody's had a chance to read and thoroughly digest these here. Don't know that, let me just put it this way. Let's talk about it. If you got, anybody has any questions, any comments, we can, we'll go from there.
I would like to make a motion to table this, to give us some time to look at the Green Bay one that you're referring to.
Thank you, Kim. Any other comments?
None.
Does the motion have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Any discussion on it? Any discussion?
Is, I guess, there's gotta be something in place already, isn't there?
There's not. We don't have anything in place right now. We don't have a code of conduct for elected officials here at the city of Mayville.
In their state. Nothing. That was supposed to follow with the state, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
I just think we're all adults. We should act like that. That's all I'm gonna say. That's why I tabled it. I don't think I need to be held under a code of conduct.
Well, apparently everybody doesn't feel that way though.
Right. But that's where I'm at, so I tabled
You made a motion on that, right?
I didn't make a motion. Somebody made a motion.
I made the motion and Ken seconded it.
it. The table.
Then any other discussion?
Oh,
All right, then we can take a vote.
sure.
Alderperson Olson,
Aye.
Alderperson Newman,
Aye.
Alderperson Smith,
No,
Alderperson Schmidt,
No.
Alderperson Abbott,
All right,
Alderperson Tillman.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll table it to next month.
Okay. Item number 4, discuss with possible action creating policy requiring newly elected officials to attend League of Wisconsin Municipalities Local Government 101 training.
This was added by Alderperson Olson.
All right, I don't think anybody should be made to do it. It's actually for the good of somebody to go to these. I've been to one already. I could use a brushing up, so I am going to join one by my computer. But I just think it'd be good for people to learn this. I don't know if we should require it, or should I use the word suggest? I just think it would be better for each alderman, especially the new ones, to attend this by their computer or in person.
I agree that it would be a good thing, but I don't know that we should include it as a requirement for officials.
Suggestion,
Suggested, sure, but I don't know that we should have a requirement.
okay.
we already have a suggestion that has been done, and I think everybody has the opportunity to go to these that has the time. And we've got it wide open, so, it's one of the things I want to do, it's got to fit my schedule. But I don't agree that we should require it. I think we actually already have it adequately covered, because it comes, as often as it comes up, it's put in front of us and reminded to us that it's there for our own benefit. And I just don't see a need to push it any further than it already is. So I'm gonna make a motion to table it.
Moved and seconded to table. Any Suggestions or comments?
If it was indefinitely or,
Yeah.
we put the timeline.
You're putting time limit on it.
I mean, I don't even know, I mean, why table it if we're all in agreement that we shouldn't require it? I mean, there's no reason really to bring it back up.
So
True.
Let me change my amendment to just drop it all together. I'm not sure what the correct verbiage is, but my recommendation would be to drop it all together.
I would agree.
Then a
That's
motion
fine.
is. Okay. Why don't you take a consensus?
Do second as amended.
Second,
I
as
believe-
amended,
I believe we
fill
just,
the bill.
we just move on to the next.
But I-
We can take a voice vote,
Yeah.
all in
But-
favor.
But I strongly suggest that if people take this by web or in person, I do. So just to add a note.
Good recommendation, Kim. Thank you.
So all in favor?
All in favor to drop it?
I,
Thank you.
Anybody not in favor of it? So be it. Item number 5, discuss with possible action recruitment options for tag center lifeguards.
This was also added by Alderperson Olson.
okay, we are having issues with getting lifeguards up the tag center. So I wanted to suggest to finance that maybe we increase the pay. We're nowhere clear or close to what other lifeguards get paid in the vicinity of our size. So I am recommending that we increase the hourly pay for the lifeguards so we can get them.
Yeah, just a little input on that. So my lifeguards, I want to say probably 75% of them are kids. They're high school kids. Some come back from college, but that has kind of dwindled because we don't pay as much.
What is the current?
So there's kind of different levels. One guard, if you're just guarding, it's $10.92 an hour. If you open the pool, so at 5 a.m, or if you supervise an open swim, you make $11.50. Swim lessons, if you're teaching swim lessons to kids and or private swim lessons, it's around 13. We have a aquatics coordinator position open that makes 15 an hour. But we haven't had anyone, because I'm trying to hire for one of those since I've been here. No one has jumped on that. So yeah, like the bare minimum you can make is $10.92. That's with the raise that 2023. A slide attendant makes under 10.
So quick question, on a new Alden person?
Yep.
There's people watching at home on the web.
Okay.
Who are you?
My name is Michaela Leering. I
Okay.
am the Recreation and Aquatics Director.
I asked her to come up, which just.
Yeah.
looking at it.
Just wanted to know.
Yeah, no.
For everyone watching and listening at home.
Yep.
And mine, so thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we know what other municipalities are paying? For example?
So we're kind of competing with the YMCA around the area.
Okay.
We honestly pay more than the YMCA. But I think the YMCA comes with more benefits. Maybe that's what it is, but I don't know. Oricon pays like 10,
What kind of benefits,
like I don't know.
position,
Yeah, there's full-time, there's more,
are any of these, do you have any full-time lifeguard?
no. Well, me, but I came and a certification, but.
I was gonna say, coming from families that had daughters that worked for the tech center as lifeguards,
Yep,
I think it's very important to obviously have them on board. Tech center is an asset to the community. Some don't think that. I understand that. If you want to be fully staffed, I think we have to be aggressive. I think we need to raise it a little bit.
I agree there.
I think that,
We can go to
it's
the-
tough, it's tough to come to the tag center and then you're excited, you got the kids all ready, and then you scheduling, obviously, that's a nightmare in
Yep.
itself. But coming as a family, get excited and say, hey, we're ready for open swimming. Well, we can't open the pool, because guess what? We didn't have enough lifeguards. Milwaukee County has the same thing. You see the recruitment ads for their Milwaukee channels. You see the recruitment ads in Madison. Hey, we need lifeguards for the pools. And you see pools shut down because they can't staff it. And that's, yeah, so that's where we're at. So we have to be a little aggressive.
I agree, 100%.
I think too, I mean, summer is very less busy for us. Obviously, it's an indoor pool. It gets even hotter in there than I think it is outside at some points. We don't like, and it's frustrating to say the least, because when we're fully staffed for an open swim on a Monday, like we were today, when it was rainy and, you know, crappy outside, we had a lot of people come in. But when it's gorgeous outside and we're fully staffed, why am I thinking it's like, you know, it's a kind of
It's a double-edged sword.
right. So, we're indoors. A lot of people, if they want to be a lifeguard, go through the training, they want to be outside. And I think if we give them more money, be a little bit better incentive, but
How much more are you talking about? And, do you think that was a trick?
honestly, if it would do the trick, I should be positive, maybe, but will it? Like, there's Washington County went up to like, I think $17.50 an hour for a lifeguard. We obviously can't do that. I mean, I would like that, but if my aquatics coordinator position is making 15. $2 more at least, at least to make it 13 an hour for these kids and or retirees that come back. And get certified, have a couple of those who are great workers. But I would say at least 13 starting.
That's where we need to go next.
Where it should
to
go
advance
next,
it.
yeah.
I think I covered that, Kim. Sorry.
What's that, Michaela?
Did you think I covered that from our conversation at Park Board?
Yes, I
Okay.
think you did a great job. And actually, I thought 13 starting was, but you said starting, so I guess we gotta start somewhere. I guess we'll need a recommendation to move this to council then.
I believe next would be finance,
Yeah, next step would be finance.
to set the dollar amounts.
I'll make a motion to move this to finance. Next finance committee meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion regarding this? I think all we need is a consensus. Huh? All in favor?
I,
Can we do it that way, or does it have to be separate? Annie,
I don't think we're not spending money.
not yet
this-
anyways.
Yep, not yet.
Next one.
All right, I then. And Michaela, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Let's move to the next one.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion. The motion we made,
Yeah. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, bringing to order, finance committee as a whole. That's 6:57. Item 2.
Do you want me to roll call?
Oh, yes, sorry, thank you.
Alderperson Smith,
Here.
Alderperson Newman,
Here.
Alderperson Schmidt,
Here.
Alderperson Abbott,
Here.
Alderperson Tillman,
here,
Alderperson Olson.
Here,
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of minutes. Item one, approval of May 22nd, 2023 finance of the whole committee minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 22nd, 2023 finance of the whole committee.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye. Opposed? No opposition, the motion carries. Item three, citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments? No citizen comments. We'll move on to item 4. Tag center reports.
All right. So first off, our membership report. Like I kind of stated with the lifeguard situations, our summer hours, or our summer in general is very slow. Besides the working out and the 24/7 access, everything is slower, so our numbers are not, I mean, like they were in December. They are on pace with last year's June, and May numbers. Any questions on that? Staffing report. We kind of said with the life, they don't need to beat a dead horse there, but, once we do get to the fall, season after Labor Day and everything, I'm very scared that we won't even have enough to staff like a morning swim. We have one retiree, his name is Dan, he works almost every day, from 7 to noon or even 5 to noon. And he's pretty much all we're gonna have that is not reliable, because I have 2 other ones that are very reliable too, but they work shorter hours, so. That's where we can come up with, a new price line there, and then, we do have a lifeguarding class scheduled for anyone that wants to become a lifeguard. It is July 14th, 15th, and 16th. I have 2 people enrolled right now, one older, middle-aged gentleman, and then another, high school kid.
Is it? Oh, I'm sure, is it posted on our website and is it out there anywhere else besides that?
Yep, I have it on our website, the tag, I have it on our Facebook. But on our city website, I guess we can add
We
it,
can.
yeah,
Send me info.
you can definitely get it added. Other than that, front desk staff are pretty, squared away there, and maintenance staff, we just got a new cleaner. So we're still technically one short cleaner, but, we've been making it work, so it's going good. Any questions with that?
How did the floor repair and all of that's going?
The pool deck,
Yes.
that is scheduled for middle of August.
That happened already.
Well, we had to get it signed and scheduled, and then we always have that, those last 2 weeks in August closed just for pool cleaning and everything. We drain the pool and refill it, so we just tacked it onto those 2 weeks. And then I guess I kind of touch on that in the maintenance report. This is all from Scott Comensberger. Window repair, there was a window that broke from the inside of our pool, like on the inside of in the pool area, not the outside. It was measured, it just shattered. We have no idea what the problem was, but
I was gonna ask you that.
yeah, but nothing was, we checked cameras and everything, nothing was thrown. It was like at midnight, so.
Nothing inside.
Nope, nothing that we can see at least,
It was shattered.
Yep.
The glass.
yeah. It was measured by Hometown, still waiting for a new window to be installed. Parking lot, our resurfacing of our parking lot started this last Friday, and it goes until tomorrow. It will be resealed and restripped. ALDAG, ALDAG, acronym, I don't know what this is. Remove 2 dampers from Minerva 1 and 2 dampers above Minerva 2 to reduce back pressure in the pool. Boiler number 2 lost cap during a high wind storm, so they measured for a new cap while they were here. This will keep the rain out. They will install this at the next service date. Carico Aquatics, this is the company that's doing our resurfacing of the pool deck. They will be bringing over paint samples for the pool deck to choose from. Don't know when they're coming, but I'm assuming either this week or next. And then ceiling tiles in our roof, it's in process of being replaced. That were the ones that were previously damaged by the leaking roof before Lopez did their repair. No leaks noted so far after Lopez did the repair. Repair cost from Lopez Roofing was just under $2,000. They stated at this time we do not need a new roof. So that was very good news.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Recommendation.
Yep, we got that all figured out.
Good.
Any questions with that? Not much help. If you're asking questions of me, but I can always ask Scott, so. Oh, all right. Recreation, men's and women's softball leagues are going really well. We've made a lot of money, like, I think over $2,200 in just concessions alone. It's not, doesn't have to do with fees or anything. So we've made a lot of revenue there. These leagues go into the middle of August. They're both Wednesday and Thursday night. So if you guys are ever bored, go check out those games. They're fun to be at. Youth sports Sanford started last Tuesday. I have about 25 kids signed up in the program. I have ages 4 through 6 from 9 to 10, and then ages 7 through 10 at 10 to 11. And we just sample different sports. So the first 2 weeks we do T-ball, basketball, soccer, and then we do one day with bowling. So that's going good. Youth girls basketball camp starts in a month, grades 3 through 8. The coach is our Mayville High School girls basketball coach, John Schultz, and his high school players. Signups are on our website, thetakecenter.recdesk.com, and it is July 24th through 26th.
I've got, sorry, go ahead.
For sure.
Yep.
The Cardinal Youth Football Camp is July 11th and 12th. This is happening again. Scott Hilbert and his staff do an amazing job with those kids. Grades 5 through 8. Last year we had just under 40 kids in it. So I'm expecting the same, but signups are still on our website. So there's that. And then lastly, our Mayville Cross Country Camp is August 7th through the 10th. Grades 6 through 12. Bob Berry always does that every year and does a great job and really gives back to the rec program. So he's a great person for them.
Thank God for Bob Berry.
I know, he's a great guy. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one. Did anybody check into like that babysitting class? By any chance?
I didn't. I was
Alrighty.
going to EMS. I guess they're on right now. But, or we can always set up a time to talk or call or whatever, but
Okay,
I will get back to you on that.
thank you.
Yep. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yep.
Item 5, treasurer's report.
It's a standing reoccurring agenda item. Obviously, we are without a comptroller treasurer at the moment, so I do not have any report.
Excuse myself.
Certainly.
Item 6, item of discussion of possible action. Item 1, presentation from Baker Tilly regarding the City of Mayville 2022 audit results.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm gonna pass something out. Since we have your audit reports there, here's some additional highlights I'll be running through. While that's going around, I'll just introduce myself. Some of you know me from past meetings. I'm John Rader. I'm the director of Baker Tilly. Been working on the audit for almost 20 years now. So, gonna run through quite a bit tonight. Answer your questions too. This is Aaron Galvin. Aaron has been on the audit for several years. And it's a big part of, the effort of getting through it and glad you could join me this evening. So I'm gonna try to accomplish 4 things, while I go through this material. First, I'm gonna run through what's going on right now, those financial highlights, and that's similar to what I presented to council in the past, and very similar to what we present to other municipalities that we audit. Then I'm gonna run through the report that we call the reporting and insights. And if some of you have that in front of you, we did mail out copies to the entire council, 700 copies, and that as well as a PDF of that report. And I'm also going to touch on a few things in the financial statements beyond the highlights that I just passed out. I should have mentioned that too. So the highlights, a couple things in the financials, we're going to run through the reporting insights, touch on some of those comments. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time, a minute, to talk about the level of accounting assistance that we have provided to the city over the last couple of years. I think that's important. And as part of that, I'm going to touch on the difference that I know has been discussed with the council, the 347,000, some clarity to that. Most importantly, I'm going to answer your questions. I hope I'm going to do my best. That's where I might draw on here, and if something comes up that he's more aware than I am. So with that, I'm going to walk through these highlights. And if you turn to page 1, this is a bar graph. And it's a snapshot of your fund balance and your general fund at the end of the year. So in fund balance, in governmental fund balance reporting, you can have 5 different components. Okay, and the city has 3 of those. So I'm going to start at the bottom there and work my way up. And each one of these represents something, obviously. So the non-spendable is at $577,000. And that's, so it's almost double from last year. See that light blue line at the bottom? That's 2022. The black is 2021. So it's up to $577,000. And that amount, almost all of it, 566,000 of it, represents amounts that have been loaned, or as we say, advanced to other funds of the city. So other funds are in a financial position where they don't have the money in the near term to meet, because they have a deficit, and we're going to look at those deficits. They have deficits, they got to get the money from somewhere, so they lean on the general fund. So there's an accounting entry that advances or loans funds to those other funds, and those are customer loan fund, recycling, TID 4, 5, and 6, and the tag. Okay, and I'm going to get back to those in a minute. That represents 26% of your general fund balance. Okay, so quite a bit. Then working our way up, nothing restricted or committed. You can see the exact same amount in assigned 94,000 as the prior year. That represents $20,000 in FEMA funds that are in there. 70,000 that has been set aside over the last couple of years for employee separations and compensated absences. That's a good funding mechanism. And about 4,900 in fire department dues that have been set aside. Now that's something we put in the report, but we don't audit it per se. That's a management decision, a city decision, what funds should be set aside. Unfortunately, during the course of the audit, the FEMA funds and the fire dues, nobody really knew where those were coming from, but it's not our role to change it. So we just kept it the same for last year. That is something I think needs to be addressed. All these amounts need to make sure that they make sense to the city. Okay. Separation funds, I'm sure do. Whether or not they've been utilized, it's used, so to speak, when people do separate from the city, that I can't answer. But these funds have been set aside for these purposes. Okay. Everything else ends up in unassigned. So you can see it went from 1.5 million in 2021 down to 1.4. So down about 29,000, not a lot. Overall, your fund balance went from 1.8 up to 2.1. And you can see in the middle of this page, very, very summarized income statement where the revenues and expenses are listed. If you look at the actual column, you can see your general fund actually grew by 251,000 and net income. Okay. It got there because your revenues came in 450,000 over
And that was driven by ambulance fees, in large part. We've seen them go up at a lot of municipalities this last year, but they were up quite a bit for Mayville. Investment income, because you do have funds invested with the state investment pool, and I did quite well in 22. So a property sale that came in, and the Audubon donations. And that's, Audubon was not budgeted. In the past, that was already netted revenues, expenses. It actually got grossed up this year, which is the proper way to do it. So that came in over budget because there was no budget. Now, expenses also came in over budget, 227,000, and that was driven by police and ambulance, and I've offset some of that over to the revenue, Audubon again, and financial administration, which is comprised of a lot of different accounts. So that's where you ended up at the end of the year. There's all the detail of this is in the back of your financial statements in a budget, the actual statement, if you're curious, on pages 61 to 64. Okay. There's a lot more detail than that in your system. So what does that mean? If you flip to page 2, the city has a policy, a fund balance policy, which is great. That's what most of my clients do. Those that don't, we always suggest it's a good thing to do. And it's a good policy here in Mayville, where it says you're going to try to maintain reserves that are 25% of next year's budget expenditures. So the budget you're operating right now, 2023, the goal of the policy is to try to have 25% of that at a minimum for your unassigned. And you are at 35%. So that's good. You're above your policy. As you can see it plotted out there, that black line represents your policy at 25%. And you can see where you've been for the last 5 years. You've been above it every one of the last 4 years. Okay. If you're curious, I would never put too much weight on this, but other places we audit are those blue dots of similar size based on population in Wisconsin. The general fund is sitting in a good position. You're above your policy, and it's been pretty consistent over the last several years. Shifting gears, we'll take a look at the debt. So debt, page 3, this is taking a look at your outstanding debt, okay? In Wisconsin, we're limited to 5% of the equalized value of TIDN. And so that's that black line there. You can see that that's your debt limit. It's up to $24.2 million. So it's actually had some nice growth from the prior year, about 18%. Okay. Your geo debt that's outstanding is that bottom line, and that went down $660,000. Okay. And it's been pretty consistent for the last 5 years, while your utilized value has been going up. So you're at the end of the year, the city is utilizing 20% of its debt limit. Last year, 2021, that's 27%. So it's gone down. That's a comfortable number. There's a lot of variability across municipalities because of TIFs. When TIFs are young, they'll put off and issue a lot of geo debt, and that can get quite, I've seen up in the upper 80s. Counties issue very low, it's like 10%. Municipalities can be all over the place. 20% is a very manageable amount, and it has been going down. Okay. The next page, page 4, is the last page of these highlights. And again, still looking at debt, but now how much debt service, how much principal and interest does the city pay compared to its other governmental expenditures? So just like you and I, we don't want to have too much of our income going towards rent or our mortgage compared to everything else, right? And this takes a look at that. We generally recommend trying to limit that to about 20% or less. And the city's at 11.9, so it's at 12%. And it's been going down every year for the last 5 years. And back in, I think it was 2019, when you closed TIF 3 1 year early, that really started to cause that to go down. That was an 8% drop right there. Other places that we audit, again, those black dots. So you can see how you compare. So you're a little bit, I would say over the last 5 years, you're pretty much on par with them, and you're under right now. Okay. So no concerns in that area. So what I'm going to do now, let you have questions on these titles. I'm going to shift gears to actual financials and touch on a few pages. I realize not all of you have
financials in front of you, so I'll do my best to explain this. All right, so the very front is kind of a, not as interesting, but it's the actual opinion, and that's starts on page 1, and this is a 3-page opinion. It's one of the main reasons you hire a firm, just like you're in a manufacturing company or SEC company, is you want this opinion, and you want a clean opinion, and that's what we've issued. It's called unmodified. It means all your financials are prepared according to the accounting rules or GAAP. Okay. And that's a hard thing to achieve these days. So there's so many accounting rules. There's 101. But when I started this 30 years ago, there were 14. So there's a lot more rules to be followed this year. Okay, so that's good. And then I'm going to flip you to actual statement. And pages 6 and 7. Pause for a second. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So it's a lot easier to see something, especially when you're in financials. So pages 6 and 7.
It's too exact.
I want you to look at here is, it's kind of a goofy looking income statement. But it's for your CDA. And it's the only place you're going to see that on the previous page, it has a balance sheet, but on the CDA, this is where you're going to see activity. And there's not much running through the CDA. And I'm bringing this up because I know there have been some questions over the last couple of months about the CDA. And it was created back when I first started working with the city as a conduit to issue lease revenue bonds for the benefit of TIP 3. And then TIP 3, through the increment, would then pay the CDA, and the CDA would pay the bond down. Okay, but now all that's done. So the CDA is truly functioning as an economic development fund. And what's running through there is the levy of about $25,000 that you've done for the last several years. And a little bit of advertising revenue that comes in, about 4,000. For the expenses, what ran through there in 2022 was some facade initiatives, a development initiative, and some advertising costs. Okay, so that's kind of what ran through there. And at the end of the year, it had a slight surplus of $3,500. So it's got about $58,000 in fund balance or equity in there, which is the same as its cash. Okay, that's where that fund sits. This is pretty common. Some places close CDAs out. And they said, all right, we're done with it. We can reopen it if we ever need to, but a lot of places will keep it open to run some economic development. Okay. All right, so that's page there. Then I'm going to flip to page 11. So pages 11 and 12 are the income statements of the city's major funds. Once you catch up again here, it's pages 11 and 12. So the general library, debt service, capital, okay, is where you see the activity of this. The general we already talked about. The library, what I want to mention here, the library is a special revenue fund, which is very typical in municipalities. And I just drove by the ongoing project, so that looks really nice. Huge number in there. The donations that come in are in that miscellaneous $1.1 million. And then a lot of capital outlay at 2.7. Normally, this would not run through a library fund because this is not a capital fund. That would run through the capital fund, which probably the place it should have been getting reported that there was real challenges with it, that I'm going to touch on in other results. But it is.
Which amount are you talking about?
So it's the library column on page 11.
Yep.
The 11.1, I'm sorry, 1.1 in miscellaneous. That's almost all donations.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, and then right below that, the 2.7 is the capital. We'll do the expenses for the new building.
You said the capital should have been run through some.
Yeah, really, it's, well, technically correct to run through the capital fund. You look at the library function, just like you do streets and a lot of different capital purposes, the funding mechanism and the cost should really go into the capital fund. But this is where it is. Where I assume it's going to continue. So it's going to be, I guess my point on that, it's going to be close to monitor that project because you don't want it to drain your library fund. Okay, because typically you keep library activities in there, not capital.
I'm not sure I'm following.
No, neither am I.
So a special revenue fund
is not capital. It's for running specific purposes outside of capital. But all the capital actually wasn't even recorded.
So the capital outlay should not be there.
Well, it can be. I'm just saying it's more technically correct to run the capital fund. But the fact that it's not, it's important to monitor this so it doesn't create a big deficit for the library's functions, activities, buying books and everything else.
So when you say the capital fund, you're talking about the city capital fund?
Correct. Along the streets, police vehicles.
Rather than buried in the library.
Yeah.
So both the investment income and the capital outlay, or just the capital outlay should be to the city?
Well, the investments, or the investment income on those donations.
Yep.
You're talking?
Yep.
Those would be retained in a separate account that they open up at the actual bank, or financial
So
institution.
it should be a separate account entirely.
Would have to, well, we were talking accounts. Are we talking about financial institution or the financials?
Well, maybe both. So right now we've got 1.2 in investment income.
That's not actually, that's, those are donations.
Or donation.
Yeah.
Well, it says investment income.
That's the line above it, 17,000. It's hard to read when it runs on 2 pages.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So that is in large part the investment income on those donations.
So donations should be in a bank, should have a bank account.
And there is.
All right.
So the fund account, yeah, go ahead.
So that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You have to keep the donations, you have to keep the investment with the donations. So if this were all to have been moved to a capital fund, it would have all moved together. Right? And it would have just been tracked within your system. This is all library fund coming in, donations, investments on it, here's what we're spending, so you know where you're at.
All the funds that are being used to build that new library.
Yep.
Are donated funds. The city does not have any funds in there whatsoever.
Yep, understand.
And so what I think I'm hearing you say is we should be tracking those in the city capital fund. It's tracked for the library.
The more technically correct, yeah, would be to move that to the capital fund. But we're gonna keep it here.
Okay, all right.
Perhaps I want to overemphasize this. It still works, but my point of emphasis is, as you can see now, 1.1 has come in donations, and you spent 2.7.
We're already behind.
Exactly. And the library fund has to function. So most places don't want the library fund to sink. They want to move it to the capital. And I've worked with a lot of places who build libraries, and they generally don't come out with surplus based on donations. It'd be wonderful if you do, and this is a unique community where you've got some really, you got the foundation and everything else, so. But that's important to know and track, part of this committee. To know where it ends up.
Because we have a deficit, then we have to pull money out of the capital fund anyway.
Potentially.
So from there, where do we get it from?
General levy. Okay, so hold on to that thought, 'cause I'm gonna move back to that in the other report. The debt service fund, so that's more of an accounting issue, and something to focus on going forward. The debt service fund, as you can see, I normally don't talk about debt service funds, but I think because the changeover in the comptroller position, there hasn't been a lot of oversight on where things are at. The debt service fund has actually got $821,000 at the end of the year. I work with a lot of places that debt service funds end up at zero each year. So it's been accumulating, it's been levying more than it's had to pay. And perhaps some refinancings and other things through the years, but it's been building. And that might make sense if the principal payments are due in February or March before the levy amounts come in. But it's something that could provide an opportunity for the city to shift some of the levy or debt towards capital or something else. Okay, that's not for me to decide, but I'm letting you know that's a good situation to be in.
We're still on page 11.
We are at the very bottom.
What did you say the debt service fund was?
It was at $821,000 of fund balance. Cash is the same.
Okay, we could move some of that to another account
Exactly.
if we want to.
Because a levy is a levy. You have to specify it by statute for what it's for, debt service, operation, and such. But as it's looked at for levy limits and everything else, it is, for the most part, it's looked at in totality. You can work, you've got some flexibility there.
Our department, not the county fire director.
But I do want to say you can't move money out of a debt service fund, because that, once it's been levied for that, that's what it needs to be used for. But going forward, you may not need to levy everything you need for debt service, for principal and interest compound. Because you can use some of that cash.
Okay, so we can't just take it and use it on something else, we can use it
That-
to service, we can use it to service new debt.
You can.
We can change when it goes in.
And for all this, you can always ask me questions later on. We also have municipal advisors at Ellers who are very, very good at this kind of thing. And they know the laws around that. That's a good part of it. All right, page 12. The last one I want to focus on here, before I look at tag last. Page 12 is your capital improvement fund column. That's your income statement. Kind of hard to read again, 2 pages here. But there's been a lot of questions around this one too. Because in 2021, the city issued debt for a number of purposes, streets and all kinds of things. And it was maybe not the information that was being looked for as far as how much is left, right? So at the end of last year, 2021, there was $438,000 in unspent bond proceeds. Okay, the end of 21. We went into fiscal 22 with a plan of what was going to be spent. At the end of the year, 22, you have a deficit in this fund of 88,000. That's a very bottom number. Because you started with, like I said, with the 438, but then you spent funds on Bridge Street, Pavilion, Main Street sculpture, a mower, street resurfacing, DPW truck, police vehicles, and a few other things. So that added up to that 522,000. So now you have a deficit of 88. So you overspent those bond proceeds. Okay. Now that's not a huge number compared to everything else, but it's something you've got to address because it's not going to get eliminated unless you have a levy in that fund, and I don't recall.
So how do we mitigate that deficit?
Through levying. You might be able to work it if you are issuing new debt in the near future, where you can build in some of that, and that's something I can't answer that. That's another question. There's a law around. Sure. Those are the most common ones. If they said structural deficit. Okay. All right, and lastly, in the statements, I'm going to talk about the tag fund. And I've talked about the tag fund in these meetings for years. It's a big focus area with a wonderful asset the city, as was previously mentioned, would be. So flip to page 14, please. So the city has 3 enterprise funds, as they're called. The water fund, wastewater fund, and with separate part of our Baker Tilly team audit those and present them. So we're talking tags. So on page 14, this is your balance sheet, runs for a couple pages. The one thing I'm going to mention here is a couple things. You have the levy amount for the city share of 110,000. Okay, that's coming in, that's been the case for several years. And then you have an accounts receivable of 56,000. That represents the membership subsidy from the foundation. And I'm going to get back to that again in a minute. That's been in place for a number of years, right? Flip to page 15, and now we're looking at the liabilities and the equity of the tag. And On page 15, under the tag, if you go down and see that number 226,814. That says advance from other funds. That represents the negative cash at the end of the year for the tag. It does not have cash at the end of the year, and that's been the case for several years. But that's been growing. I'm gonna show you that in a second too. There were restricted amounts in this tag center fund for the remodel that happened a couple years ago and for the equipment replacement. And we made entries to zero those out. They weren't adjusted all year. They weren't adjusted in 20, they're adjusted in 21 too. As equipment is purchased, that's what those funds are for. And they need to be adjusted. And because you pay the bills out of the regular cash and you got to reimburse yourself. Every year we come in and nothing's adjusted. We have to move it all. Well, that's all gone. There's no more restricted there because it's been used up. And that there's no cash in there either. Okay.
So we're underfunded.
It's actually, I mean, it continues to operate because the cash is shared through all the funds throughout the city. And there's a lot more in the back of these statements. So that's where it's at. A couple of things I'm going to mention in the statements, and I'm going to talk about the other report, the reporting insights. So on the bottom of page 33 this time, I was talking about the advances and the deficit positions. The bottom of page 33, deficit balances. Together. It is not, first I want to preface this by saying, it is not unusual for governments to have deficit balances in some of their funds, okay? Especially TIFs. And your TIFs, while they have deficits, you know, they're not large compared to everything else. And the most important thing with a TIF is to look forward and say, where's it going? Can it recover this? That's, you know, we're the auditors, we're always looking back, but it's important to look forward and know where they're going. So there are some TIFs with deficits. We talked about the capital improvement, 88,000, that first number, that's got a deficit. The recycling fund has a deficit, and the customer loan fund has a deficit. Very similar to that, if you're wondering, well, okay, how much are they borrowing from the general fund then? That's on the top of page 42, if you're interested. You can turn if you want to. It's that same number we just talked about, 506,000, the general fund, 26% of the fund balance is being borrowed by other funds, top of page 42. And those advances are very close to the deficit that we just talked about. And accrual accounting is out in these differences. We've got payables and receivables in there too. But they should correlate. Takeaway from this is the general fund's in good shape. The debt is manageable. You limited the issuances and such, and it's very manageable as far as what you pay every year. Your debt capacity is, you know, only 20% of it's being used. You're in a good situation there. But you do have some other funds that don't have massive deficits, but they have gone under, so to speak, and they, you know, need to be addressed before they do get large.
Got a question. Page 33.
Okay.
We've got library. Expenditures, $2,807,851. That's for the building, correct?
That's for the building.
And let's see that. This is where I think that some of these things are in error, because the entire building fund comes from donations. There's no city money going into that whatsoever.
So page 33, what you're talking about here, 2.8 million, those are the actual expenditures of the entire library fund, not just the new building.
Yeah.
And if you look up the statement where we just talked about the 2.8 million, that compares it to the budget. You didn't budget for those capital expenditures in the library fund. It's not your system like that. And so we as auditors, GAAP says you have to disclose that. And that's what this is, every one of these numbers. That's a big utility, yeah. But that question.
Well, it's not so much that we spent the money that we didn't budget for.
That's all it is. That's all it is. Yeah, right. I assume you're monitoring it somewhere, right?
It's accounting, it's not written down in trouble.
Yeah. All right. Other questions on the numbers?
So what you're saying is that monies that are being spent for the building, of that building, weren't budgeted for.
They weren't budgeted. In the adopted budget.
So that would be so.
To us as auditors,
Yeah,
that's not a big deal, to be honest with you. It's in there because it has to be in there, just the deficit and things like that, that I really want you to draw your attention to. Okay. The third thing I'm gonna do is just touch on the level of assistance that we provided. Because when Aaron and I have come over the last couple of years, we are making a lot of entries. And this is summarized in the back of the other document, the audit, the reporting and insight, but if you're curious, I'm gonna pass this around. These are the entries for 2021 and 2022. So we had 43 entries this year and 47 in 2021. This isn't a debit or credit, these are many debit credits. And so there's the entries, and we always give these to management, to post, and
That's normal for a city our size. I think we're operating like it should be.
I always say if you get 10 or fewer, you're in good shape. So you're in the 40s, and this is not including the utilities. Okay. So it's a lot. Now, I've worked with a lot of different people here at the city through the years, as far as the comptroller position and such, and, you know, we have gotten it down to, I think, just a couple. Now it's 5. So that means your audit is costly. That means that you're facing a lot of challenges you're challenging. But it also means that you get good financial information through the year. You're not. You're not, and that's a concern. And as an auditor, it's my responsibility to tell you that, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. Not to harp on you. I want it to get better, just like you do. So whatever you can do to improve that is really important. Then all these other decisions come a lot easier. The last thing I'm going to touch on here before I do that last report is there's been a lot of discussion about a difference at the beginning of the audit, and the difference was $347,216. And quick synopsis or history of this: when we started our audit, the utility team and our team pull the numbers out. We get the okay. Civic comes in and get the numbers, and they give it, and we download it. First thing we look at, the balance, debits and credits. And it did. But the way this system works is there's an allocation behind the scenes that includes Civic and includes many systems, medium to large, that are good systems. There's an allocation. So when bills are paid and funds are collected, receipts are made, right? You're entered into the system and it parks it. And then once they're paid, or you post it, it hits the various funds, like we were just talking about, goes to the capital fund or a TIP fund or the general fund, and it hits cash as well. Okay. Well, until you run that, it sits there behind it. So we got all the numbers, we imported it, big balance, and we realized that the allocation was off. It was not in balance. So that doesn't mean there are funds missing. It means there's, and there could, but it almost always means there's been an error in the postings during the year. And that's in fact what it was. So there are three main drivers. The water fund, we had to, with 148,000 of it, where we had to debit their cash. So we increased their cash. We debit or credited debts payable. And we had to credit retained earnings. Retained earnings was off. Okay. The sewer fund, it was a very similar situation. 85,000, we'll call it 86,000. Again, we increased the cash. We credited debt payable. And we credited retained earnings. It was out of balance. The debits equal the credits. But it didn't tie to last year's statements where we ended up. Back to retained earnings piece, once that's off, we're like, we're not starting in the right place. Water and sewer fund. And then the third component was at the end of 2022, the tax collections that came in were not posted to the correct period. And we discovered that by testing the January settlement. So 98,000 from a tax deposit that was recorded in January of 2023 in the system, but was in the bank in 2022. So that was the third piece of this puzzle. It took a lot of effort to figure this out.
Posted in correct
Year.
year.
You can't accrue cash. If I come in and pay my taxes or mail it in by the 31st, it should be in the system of the 31st. So there's some that were correct.
How much of, we have an accounting software system, but they upgraded in August. It's my current understanding that that could be a big portion of a problem. If there's other things that we need to pay attention to today, I know you have other things talking about, inadequate segregation for duties and a whole host of things in here that, point to needing more internal checks and balances, which I completely agree with. Can you expound or talk to that any more than what I've commented on?
So I'm not a user of the system, even though they're an affiliate of Bakersfield. For independence, we don't get involved with it. Will it be a better system for reporting, for reading reports? Everything I've heard it is. It's probably more user friendly. I think you've had problems with your server not supporting some of the postings and it crashing.
Yes.
So that upgrade will also help. Just with any system, upgrade is generally going to be better. Will it reduce the number of entries? I don't think it has anything to do with it.
So that's what the check and balance.
Yep, and good monitoring of where you're at. Yep. From a staff standpoint, I'm sure it's frustrating to use an old system. Good question. Others than that,
Thank you.
and I realize the cities, the unfortunate thing about auction, we always look back, like I said, and I realize the city's looking, what do we do to move forward? And I commend you for that. To understand some of that, I think it helps to kind of see where we're at and what are the things to focus on. So last thing I'm gonna talk about, is reporting and insights. So again, if you could share this, I'm gonna start on page 6. So yes, to your point, the first point is a fairly general point, segregation and duties. This is not uncommon in the city of Simon, maybe, because you just can't have lots of people doing every aspect, right? So auditors, we gotta put this in here. That's a very high level comment. Always a good thing to segregate as much as you want. Now, on the bottom of page 6, top half of page 7, these are more specific. And these are things that there are certain areas we call major transaction areas. How do you pay your bills? How do you collect taxes? How do you post journal entries? Things like that, that we look at very specifically. So on the top of page 7, the first point is adjusting journal entries. We test them every place we go every year. Sample them, and we're looking for 3 things. Do they make sense? Are they supported? And has somebody independently reviewed them? Because a journal entry is you're taking entry that's already information that's already in the system and you're moving it. So it's high risk. Okay, so we always test. And if those 3 things aren't in there, that's an issue. And they have not been reviewed for several years. And then they really should be by somebody else. Also from a training standpoint, okay, just some oversight. Oversight and training, and they should be supported.
Second point there, the bank and investment account reconciliation. This is a major problem in 2021. The bank reconciliations weren't being done. Okay. When we came out in early 2022, cash was way out. Bonds have been issued that months ahead of time, $3 million that were not recorded in their system. It was lots of challenges. 2022, this year's audit, and the bank reconciliations were being done, but there was always a plug, an unknown number, getting it to balance from month to month, and that number was changing, which is always a problem. Same number, okay, you got something, you got to find it, but it's a different number, it's not balanced. Now, when your last comptroller was here, she came on board, she did get it to balance, and we tested it. So it wasn't balanced during the audit this spring. And Aaron and I and the team tested that, like I said. But the thing that still wasn't being done is it wasn't being independently reviewed. And that is one of the most important controls, to have that bank reconciliation, somebody else spot check it, make sure it makes sense. Okay. So that's a control you want to try to implement once you get somebody on board to make some changes here. The third bullet point there, year-end reconciliation. This is a hard thing to achieve, again, for place inside the Mayville. But these are the year-end reconciliations. So, you know, what makes up your payables, your retainages, your receivables, all these different accounts. Somebody working on that who doesn't actually process those transactions. Ideally, you want to separate those. But again, that's a hard thing to do. I think you could definitely add some compensating controls here. To the clerk or somebody else taking a look at those periodically, versus just one person doing it. But the reality is a lot of these balances, they weren't even updated from the last year. So we had to figure it out, match what those entries are. Tell you guys a couple things. They make periodic, not many, but periodic entries, journal entries again to the rec desk system. And those should be independently reviewed. And then there should be segregation between cash collection and the checks that are in. However, that is a hard thing to achieve with staffing and everything else. And again, we're auditors, we pointed out, is it realistic? It's hard to achieve. You have to serve the public, obviously. But again, you get collections of funds outside of the centralized system, and you have some risk, and that's what that's stated to. We're not saying anything's wrong, just saying that that presents a control risk. Okay, so the library building activity, that's in the middle of page 7, and this kind of gets us to the point we were talking about earlier. So during the audit, none of it was recorded in your system. It was all flowing through that banker. Okay. So anytime you get an activity as significant as that, you want to bring it in-house. You want to record those numbers in your system so that the reports that you look at each month of the audit, because we came in and there's nothing in there. And so we had to get that, figure out, make some very significant entries to get all that recorded in your actual financials and in your system. That kind of activity, it can run through that separate account. That's a good thing, actually at the bank, but it needs to be recorded here as well. And that's kind of what that's getting at. And as it says, anytime it bypasses the established and centralized controls of the city, it results in material entries and control issues at the end of the year. Page 7, and the top of page 8. This is a financial statement close process. This is in almost every one of our reports. And it's in here because we compare your financials and we have material entries, and we do for 90-some% of our governments that we audit. It's just you don't have the resources to compare financials, but the auditing standards say we have to put it here, but this should be the least of your concerns. There were some things from the 2021 audit that we resolved or remediated, and those are at the top of page 8. So we're looking for reconciliation between the rec desk system used by TAG and the city's GL, and that was being done kindly, so that was good to see. So that point will go away. And the actual condition of financial records, while we still had 40-some entries, we didn't have those significant issues like bond proceeds or loss of invoices not being posted, all those kind of problems that, to be honest with you, in 30 years I had not seen. in 2021. We did not see those again in 2022. Okay. So there was an improvement in the financial records. Cash balance other than the allocation piece. So there's one thing you want to keep it balanced with cash. So then we get into the other comments on the top of page 8. We've got 3 new points in here. The library point I mentioned was new, and then we got 3 other new ones here. Timely payment of invoices and billings. We tested some of these, and things were not always getting paid timely or billed timely. And that's probably due to some of the turnover and other issues. Benefit payments, there should be a mechanism in place to turn those off when somebody leaves the city, terminates or retires. These include things like life and health insurance, paid to ETF and the WRS. There's usually a mechanism when they leave that those get turned off. And then those ETF and WRS send statements to the city that should get reconciled to who's getting paid. So they don't, try to recapture, and I think they have recaptured some of that, perhaps all of it. But that's something that should just be a kind of a no-brainer and take access off the system and everything else that happens. Charge accounts, there are various charge accounts around the city where city employees use. Again, this is very, very common. No issue with that. But you want to create some kinds of controls, and the best way to create a policy so that people understand some of these things that are both pointed down here. Ideally, sign off on that policy that they agree to adhere to them. And then you want to have a procedure in place with the vendors in town, the hardware store, say somebody leaves the city, you don't want them going down there a month later charging things to the city. You know, the vendors need to know who's current on this, who's updating that. Okay. Again, we didn't have problems per se with this kind of stuff. These are more recommendations that we feel are good best practices, good things to have in place. Page 9. This is the restricted cash equipment account. Again, this gets back to the tag center. So funds have been donated or generously for the replacement of that equipment. It kind of covers the depreciation cost in that account, right? And for the last several years, like I said, we come in and nothing's been adjusted. And so you're using your normal cash for it, and this is sitting out there. And so cash needs to be moved at the bank, number 1, to replenish your general account, your general checking account. And then 2, an entry made in the system to track this. And when they donate money, they bring it back up. That's a regular thing that the city used to do, but it's fallen off the rails the last 6 years. And you know, the relationship with the foundation stuff, this is important stuff. Same with the membership subsidy. We have to figure that out every year. And this is something that we can, but that's not what you want. We come in here for a week and we're struggling to get our hands around it, where this is something the city really needs to be doing on a regular basis. Update that. Last one on this page is bank failures. Again, this is not unusual, but in today's light of some bank failures occurring, there's a lot of money at the bank at the end of the year because of tax collections coming in. And so one of the things we test is how much of those funds that are held by the city are covered or collateralized. Okay, FDIC covers some, the state has 400,000 that covers, but then you gotta figure out the balance. Some places say we're willing to live with this risk, and that's fine. But a lot of places will cover that with collateral. We got 10.2 million exposed to risk if that bank was to fail on January 2nd. That's what the exposure is, pretty significant, right? Now it goes away pretty quickly as you settle with the county. It goes way up, it goes way down pretty quickly. But there's one thing to keep in mind, that you could easily arrange that to be covered with the bank. Again, this is not uncommon. I'm not picking on Mayville. I'm just saying that this is something that we see, and it's our responsibility to point out. And then the last I'll mention, and this has been in this report for I think about 12 years running. Pages 9 and 10, the TAG Center financial position. If you look at page 10, there's a lot of different ways to look at the TAG fund. You know, is it doing well or not? But one is an obvious one is where is it at with cash?
If you go back to 2009, you can see that deficit of $1 million, okay? We're talking about 226,000, which is no small change today. But you can see it had a incredible recovery, for, 10 to 12 years there. And that was part of the 10-year financial recovery plan. Reevaluating studies done, generosity of the foundation, revisiting fees and everything else. So it almost got rid of it back in 2019. And now you're doing the, direct levy for the subsidy of the city too. It's something to keep your eye on, and that's what we're saying here. This is where it's at, and keep evaluating it, going forward. Okay. That was a lot. Any questions on any of those points?
A lot of that here, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
You did a good job of explaining it to non-accountants.
Well, like I said, we read the minutes, I've listened to some of the recordings, and I know there've been a lot of questions about things. And I said this to Andy when she was here, and I said to the mayor, like, if we, having been working with the city for so many years, can add clarity to some of these questions, we're available. I mean, you guys have worked with us for many years, and we appreciate that. And I don't know all the answers. I certainly can't resolve them all for you going forward. That's your role, and the staff and the citizens. But I can answer some of those because you've had the turnover. So it's like, who do you turn to answer some things? And I can do my best to try to help. We do have old files and such. As well as, again, your municipal advisors can help.
Yeah, I think the big hurdle to get over is how to fix it, so there's not as many corrections. Yeah,
You really want to get the records cleaned up. I mean, the good news is your general fund's in good shape and your debt load is low. And your table has a deficit. It's a great asset and it's not a huge deficit compared to where it's been in the past. Definitely solvable. Near term. And your TIFs, TIF 3 was very successful. Both the year early, had a nice payout. Other districts. You got a wonderful library going on in your town, generosity. And so there's a lot of good things here. But get your records cleaned up. Help a lot. But then we get back to auditing. We spend a lot of time fixing stuff.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we've done the presentation.
Thank you.
We're good with possible action, City of Mayville.
My understanding is that was added just to give you guys room to discuss if you needed to, or take any steps if you wanted to immediately.
I think we've answered question 2. Item 3, presentation from MSA Professional Services regarding engineering and short-term city administrative services.
All right. They'll still be here remotely. We're just gonna let him plug in.
How you guys doing? Good. Good. How long these meetings typically go?
Is that yet?
Oh, and you guys are stuck behind us yet, have to go later? Yeah. I can see what you're thinking right now.
I've actually been the one that last week we were going.
Yeah, that's great, buddy. Get a presentation up, guys, but after listening and being here since 6 o'clock and hearing some of the stuff, we wanted to ask you a couple questions. Do you know MSA and do you know why we're here? No. And you're new, right? Yeah. Fair enough. Anybody else?
I would love to hear more details.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Guys, I'm gonna be upfront with you and try and so you can hear what's going on, but this was an idea that came up, obviously with some discussions that we've had with staff and with the mayor. And I'm here tonight to talk about engineering services. We're also talking about temporary services because of things that are going on in your community, that when I listened the whole night tonight, this is quite interesting. So I want to make ourselves available, but to be honest with you, I think open dialogue to just discussing it is the best way to go with it. And although we got a presentation and we got Diane here, we have different roles. MSA is a consulting engineering firm. I'll be able to, I can turn this on just to show a little bit about us. We work in your area. We're from Beaver Dam, from the Appleton office. We have 400 people in our company. We have about 12 offices in MSA, and we work for a lot of communities around people. And so when I listen tonight to some of the things you discussed, the things are just feeding our head. I can tell you right now, Diane, an administrator for many communities, been doing it for 25 years. She is taking more notes than you can imagine and has dealt with some of the same problems that you're talking about tonight. And literally working with communities right now, doing the same things, dealing with it. I don't, like I said, but you're not alone. And you have some of the same issues, transition, lack of staff, and kind of why we did this or why we're here a little bit, because we saw some of the stuff we saw on the paper. But I just want to be upfront when we do this. And I think it's even more important for you to have an open discussion, because a lot of what we're talking about is basically what's going on around you. And I mean, from funding, from grants, principal forgiveness, loan programs. The fact that, and I'll just bring one up, when I listened to your fire department talk, I just caught them outside and gave them a card, because there's at least a handful of communities that we help with grants in order to get
Assistant to firefighter drainage through FEMA.
and so it'll be $500,000.
And that's exactly the kind of question we need engineering support for, find those sort of funds.
Well, and that's why we're here, and I don't want, but we have. And we talk about ourselves, we're 400 people, but where we started, our roots from Baraboo, how we help communities, and we probably represent over 300 in the state of Wisconsin. We know funding better than anybody else.
So here's a question I have then. So you guys have been working with us with Mayo for quite a while.
Some, yes, for certain areas, yes.
All right, thanks for the clarification. So my understanding is that we've been using your services as, I'm gonna refer to it as on call. Is that a fair?
Engineer record, yeah.
Just two things. Who put this on the agenda, number one? Annie?
Mayor Gwen.
Yeah.
Okay, and Roger, I'm sorry, you're really hard to understand.
All right, I'll try to speak up, Kim.
All right, thanks.
So as I understand it, right now, we've been using engineering services, I'm gonna call it ad hoc on a per project basis. Is that sound correct?
You have different departments that use different engineers. You've had a general engineer that provides office hours at different times, but you do have some type of a system of different companies that work for you, yes. If you want me to talk a little bit about ourselves first and what we provide and different types of funding, some of this might be clear.
Unless somebody else has questions, why don't you do that? Because otherwise I'm gonna probably be asking questions you'd answer if I just listen.
It could, but it's gonna give you more ideas. And so when I talk about it, we show the different fundings and the communities around you. You can see the different grants and stuff that we have available. And like I said, over $625 million since what year was it? 2017 or 2000 and so. But like I said, we really have capitalized on that for our communities. General engineering services, just something that you're a little familiar with MSA, because we have worked on two different things or a couple different things throughout the years. And so I don't think there's much more exciting. This is something that I did want to show you, although this is not something that's really important. That is a scorecard that MSA puts together for all its communities. And although it's very light and you're looking at it, this isn't really a big deal what the information is. But up on top is the CDBG application and where you're currently at 42% and what you need to be eligible for that type of work. There's 4 or 5 different types of CDBG. So what you're looking for depends on what the project is. And those are things that we track quite a bit. The other things that you're familiar with, one in the middle here, and I know we've talked about this before, but that's your Safe and Clean Water Fund program. We're very comfortable with that because we know for the next 5 years, starting last year, everybody that's eligible for principal forgiveness should get 100% of their principal funding taken care of. So you're at 20% with about a 2.2 interest rate, and you have the capability to get $1.6 million off of your water and $2 million for your wastewater treatment plant. So those are numbers that obviously are there that we can develop up. And then when you look at, you go on, you start getting into like right here, your medium household income. And then where your tip is, where you can tell you're not even the 1%. So your tip is sitting with the retirement of number 3. That you have a lot of room to grow with any expansion that comes to your community. So what that means, and I'll just show you Horicon for an example, because we have every community we want, but they're a little bit 35% here, but they're actually at 45% principal forgiveness of a 1.2% interest rate, but their tip is very close to 12%. And so we have that and we have the ability to look at it, but that's just a snapshot for me. That gives me the ability to see how can I find new funding and where to go from here. This is something I wanted to share with you because in 2021, you went out to RFP for your Bridge Street project. And I know when I met here, I met with Courtney and the mayor, and I talked to Courtney, she's worked with us quite a bit. And we sat here, we talked about the project, and we said, okay, well, let me tell you about it. Well, we heard that you had a business expanding in the area. And when we thought about it, it's like, can you give it one more year? Can you consider it? I said, we'll only tell you that because like in Fox Lake, when they had Leroy Meats came in, they received a bunch of CDBG funds for $700,000 to help build that intersection that goes in by, next to the dollar store right by Leroy Meats there. But they got that through funding, through a program, just because of the job creation next to it. Now, we don't know if it would have worked out, and we applied for it. So I actually took some of this information, all this stuff that you see, I went backwards. And when all the stuff you see here came from the application or the, our proposal that we submitted to you in 2021. And what I want to point out to you is that although you asked for it, the funding that you see with communities around here, there's the Fox Lake, the Juneau, we didn't have room for everything. But Lemire, a new community we work with, we use TIP districts to help them out, which if you're familiar with them at all, they built that new road, East Avenue, that went out to the Grande Cheese. They had a booster station they have and a new water main that got built all the way to, what is that, printing package and those apartments are over there because they had to, all because of being able to utilize Ellers and MSA on the TIP district. They looked at the different types of funding. They explored the T grants that are available through the DOT. They also looked at CDBG grants that are available, but without the lack of information, we were still able to get that work done through TIP without any cost. I bring that up because then you look at down here, and I want to bring up one more, like Fox Lake, I already talked about, but Campbellsport, we just became their engineer right before your proposal in 21, and within 6 months, we got them $800,000.
What's a CB grant?
CDBG?
Yeah.
Community Block Grant, and that's a really unique one, depending on what it is. Dodge County had it a while back where they had a $1.2 million that they had to give back to the federal government. And because of involvement, you guys were part of it. And it was kind of interesting because you were part of that closed program and one of your hotels borrowed funds, but wasn't able to pay it back. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, now it does. Thank you.
Yeah, so with that, well, that's just one element of it. There's principal forgiveness, there's economic growth, there's like 4 or 5 ways to get funding, but based on what's going on in your community, you have to play it out, and those rules change all the time. And so I'm just like looking at it and looking at the different types of funding. Oakfield, they were able to get through closed funds through Fond du Lac County, and Waupun has been other ways, and then like Princeton is one we're going to talk about a little bit more if you're interested. But I guess what we're pointing out is that when we're involved with your community, it's not about being reactive to what you say. It's about knowing what's going on ahead of you so that we can tell you ways to fund it. I met with Broadhead last week and we're looking at projects all the way out to 2025 and evaluating it just on the same criteria you're looking at in order to see what you can do to possibly reach some funding to get this stuff done. And that's where you're going to see a big difference. And so, yeah, there's things that have been happening around you. And when I think about it, and like I said, Horicon making the transition as well, is that we're looking ahead for funding. And it's just not one of those things that you can just wait and see. Those are things you have to do. We have a team of 13 that work on this. Diane's one of them. She has a big part of that. Her focus is a little bit different than what the other ones do. But like I said, it's kind of interesting listening tonight and hearing it and just knowing that there's a lot of ideas ahead of you. I'll move on to another slide. Obviously, we're working on your treatment plan. There's funding that will look out for you there. That's one of the projects we have ongoing. Another one here, and I don't know, you guys remember, I was in front of you probably in February or March talking about your wonderful flooding that's occurring around your community. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever happened on that? Whatever happened on that? I thought you guys were working on that.
Well, that's a good question to ask. So I'll tell you what I know that happened. But we presented it to you, we talked about it, and that's where it stopped. And so our report was basically to identify the areas, tell you what your options are, and to be upfront with you when you look for the new board members. This, okay, so this area right here is the same area as right here. So this is the area that drains throughout your community. Get back fingers, you'll see how it goes. But basically what it was is just knowing that you have an area that there's nothing you can do, it's going to flood. The biggest thing is there's nothing you can do about it for at least 10 years. And so when you think about it, planning ahead, it's all about not making it worse and being able to look for things that can offer ideas to make the flooding better. But when it comes down to the throw it over by the treatment plant, and no matter what you do, if you take that entire red area that drains to it and basically take it away and never drain to it again, that area down in the bottom still floods. There's nothing you can do because those are backwaters coming from the waterway. So what we're doing about it and what I suggest is obviously make sure you don't make it worse. I know there's process out there to go through FEMA in order to get funding, in order to try and get that resolved, but that's like a 4-year process.
And actually, there's a new program with the Inflation Reduction Act called Protect that it just came out. It was just opened in the last month and it's open for 5 years and then the program's done. And that may be something that would be a potential project for that grant.
And see, what I want to share with you is we're all different. And you met Eric Thompson, he's my stormwater expert, he was here to talk about. Greg Gunderson, if you're part of the other one with the wastewater treatment plant, he works in those. Diane is different. And she's part of our funding. And I say that very nicely, but she's in charge of looking out for new funding. So when you think of 13 people, we have CDBGs that are done all the time. There was 32 applications that went in the state of Wisconsin this year. We applied for 15 of them. We know what the scores are. We're pretty sure we'll know how they'll end up, but we know there's only 50% funding this year for those projects, and we'll know here in August how well we did. And that's information we bring to our clients. Diane's looking at the new funding. When we talk about Bill and she says that, that's 100% part of her job, is to look out and prepare us to know what to share with our communities. And so when I say, hey, this is what the FEMA was, this is in LaValle, when they had the same flooding and problems that occurred at the same time. They're working at purchasing the homes, trying to find ways to make the funding work, because that's what they had to deal with. And that process is not fun. Now, for something quicker that we can work at, you have a history of flooding in this area, those are things you have to explore until you identify the problem and make sure the residents know. Usually much doesn't happen. So hopefully that answers your question, Kim, but at the end of the day, it's what I know where we left off.
That is the purchasing of the homes. Another subject, another day, I guess, huh?
Well, it's kind of one of those things that when the opportunities like what Diane just mentioned, when they come up, we want to bring them to you and say, okay, you know about this problem, are you ready to tackle it? And at some point, yeah, we do have to tell the residents. There's no way around it. We'd be happy to share that message because it's only what they need to know what's going on. And honestly, they probably already know. The amount of flooding that's occurred over time, I think, we're in a drought right now, so I don't think you're gonna have a problem right now or this year. But it's gonna come back. And there's just no way around it. I'm gonna introduce Nate here a little bit. This is Randolph. I just want to share this with you, a small community. I'm from Randolph, so I know this community well. I've been here. What's that? Okay. So Randolph here is a community, we've been working for us since 1990 and it goes through the present day. I kind of work for them right now. We're up to $14 million of grants they've received since that time. So it does predate me. We've been a long-term client, and because they know the program, we work with them so much that even their last project that we're doing right now got $1.6 million worth of funding on a $2 million project. And so that's because, like I said, they know the system, they know how to get the surveys, they know how to get the results. And they missed out on it 2 years ago, or a year before that, when we went after the funding, but they missed it by 3 points. So obviously we had some that weren't even close. We had them very close. We readjusted it, looked at it, see what we could do to score a little bit higher, resubmitted it, and they got the $1 million. And then we got them the principal forgiveness that they'll be getting here probably, by next year. So with that, that's kind of the insight that we have in order to do this. I want to introduce Nate here a little bit. This is one of the guys that works for us. So we have a different system. And so when you see the scale of MSA, I want to look 5 years ahead. That's my goal. But Nate, and again, he's just going to talk about Princeton a little bit about how the funding is, so you understand how this is embedded into us. but he's the guy that does the day-to-day. He gets everything done and taken care of. And so if you want to just talk a little bit about what I said, I think.
Can we
that's-
interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah, you sure can.
I've got an employee sitting over here that's been here for 2 hours now, and he can probably get finished with his report in about 10 minutes. If you don't mind. I mean, it's,
I'll be honest with you, that'd be fine with us. We were just told to show up and did it. But if you have someone that you want to get in and out, because this is gonna be something where you have questions, I don't want to waste his time with this either.
right, I mean, he's, you know. Well, I think he'll take.
Okay.
So we have to close this meeting and open up a new one?
I'm not sure. He's on Public Works, but I think Jack is also here because one of the finance agenda items is discussed with possible action needed repairs on DPW equipment.
Public Works, I'm not concerned about because that was actually last month's. It was my mistake, I didn't get it through at the time. But I'm here is actually for a discussion of repairs. If you guys will do anything.
You want to table ours?
But I mean, that is on finance. If we want to move his item number 6 up, we can address it. We're in finance right now. And come back to MSA's presentation. That's.
Well, I kind of hate to interrupt MSA.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt you, but I just.
Whatever you guys want to do. Fine. Let's, thank you, Jack. Let's get going with MSA presentation.
Just pretty possible.
Get the
Yeah,
comment.
I'll be quick. That's all right.
That would have taken us 5 minutes.
It's all when we come in and sometime.
All right, so Joe's mentioned, my name is Nate Rigo, been with MSA, coming up on 6 years now. Joe gave a pretty good introduction to me. I was gonna say right away, I'm his front man. He's kind of the eye candy in meetings. But quickly kind of rose up the ranks and became a project manager. And now, last few years, I kind of been dealing with communities on a day-to-day basis, all their needs kind of go through me, and I try to filter through, again, the 400 employees that Joe has mentioned many times. One is such community, city of Princeton, which admittedly, right when I started is kind of when we started taking over. First project that we kind of took over on is Farmer Street. Wasn't too involved with that, so I won't elaborate too much on that, but that is CDBG funding as well, DNR Principal Virginia's program. The next project, however, that the city entrusted us was West Water Street, and that was where I was involved with the design all the way through the construction process. And again, I'm gonna say helped the city secure almost $500,000 of CDBG, as you kind of see the recurring theme here. So heavily involved with that. So I got to deal with the day-to-day basis, the city administrator, as well as the DPW staff and utility staff. So developing that relationship, kind of realized that success of the project wasn't just for success for MSA, but the client as well. Kind of developed my passion for client liaison duties. With that project going so well, city kind of entrusted us with kind of the planning of their next 3 years. And all the planning that Joe's mentioned before, we like to combine funding sources if possible. And that's kind of our best project so far in Princeton is that County Road D project, which is kind of highlighted in green. We got STP funding, which is kind of through the state, and working with the county as well as the city kind of to reconstruct that road. And we also layered that upon with CDBG funds. And not only did CDBG funds kind of cover the sewer and water portions of this project, but we also used it for the electrical improvements along the road corridor there. Since the city of Princeton does their own electric service to the residents. It also covered all the real estate acquisition that was required for that STP funding. So we had to follow DOT guidelines. It also covered portions of the county and city match that is required for that STP funding. So all in all, that project, the city only had to pay for 10% of the project total, which, you know, what they think,
Well, over 900,000, they were responsible. It was like a $5 million project, but the DOT covered like the 80%. But they ended up only paying 10%. So at the end of the day, it was only 1.1 million. It probably only cost them $150,000 for a $5 million project. Guys, like I said, we got a lot more. I know you got this going on and stuff, but I really think it's important that you talk to Diane because of what I just heard today. Do you like to do it, or would you like to just get this 10 minutes and get this, and we'll come right back and tell you about that?
Let's get Jack up here.
Yeah.
Get him, take this.
Go ahead, Jerry. So just table mine for now and
Okay, mine is, like I said, my report for monthly report, we can not worry about it. Okay, yeah. But, we do want to get into, my maintenance budget. We have some issues that we're gonna be grossly over budget with. And I think we are aware of this. I think we talked about this last month. And I think we'll have to finalize this just to make sure we can go ahead and do everything we need to do.
Loader.
The loader that has been done. Because that was being taken care of when we had our last meeting. So that one ran us about 34,000. With a budget of 28,000. We also needed new tires on our front end loader, our newer one, and our backhoe, which came up to about 11,000. So right there, we're over budget quite a bit. Also, one of my newer plow trucks, we just took over to Lakeside. We had a transmission, not a transmission, but a hydraulic leak. We got it over there and the whole thing went up in smoke. So when you said went up in smoke, they weren't positive on what it was yet, but it was the fluids leaked out, got onto the hot hydraulic because we can't shut that one off. There's a new stuff that one is not possible to cut off our hydraulic, so we got it over there and started smoking. It came to rest, but I'm waiting on a price for that. Another. This is all stuff, I mean, I heard Brad Martins talk about equipment. I'm not gonna even get into that. We're so far behind also. I'm redoing, like every 10 years, you should have a new plow truck. And we've got 2 that are 13 already and 1 that's 10. I mean, all this equipment is used every single day, but I'm not looking to replace, I'm looking to make sure we're okay with fixing what we have, because we have to have it. So the one right now that's in the cab is our leaf truck, is what we all are compost with. So we've been using it without a tarp, which isn't really the way to go, so we can't haul it to the landfill. So I just want to make sure you guys understand where I'm at with all this. Our bucket truck hasn't even gone in for inspection yet. That can be anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000. Okay, and that is something that I have to do every year. And it's very important when I have a guy up there at 55 feet that thing is inspected. Also, we have to do our DOT inspections every year, which is on the rest of my plow trucks. And I just want to make sure you guys understand that this is stuff that has to be done. So,
So the budget, you mentioned $28,000 budget, is it this? I mean, not saying you did something wrong, did we not give you enough budget?
right, I've discussed this for years.
Okay.
It was almost impossible to operate on a maintenance budget, 28,000 when I had 4 plow trucks, 2 loaders, a backhoe, a bucket truck.
What should it be?
I talked to certain contractors, they're talking like 150. Not 28,000. They find it almost unbelievable that we operate on $28,000. I mean, if a tranny goes on one of my big trucks, we're looking at, I don't even know.
Over your budget.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff, I mean, we have a loader that is 1995. The one we just stuck 34,000. Not that, I know we talked about that one, maybe even thinking about leasing, getting into the leasing program or whatever, but that's not what I'm after. I'm not after, saying we have to get new equipment. I understand where we're at. I'm not gonna push that. I just want to make sure you guys know that when this stuff goes, I have to repair it. Because it's used every day. Yeah, not opposed with that. So I want you to be aware that we're definitely gonna be over budget.
Yeah, I guess the thing I think about is we need to know how much over budget when you know.
I will definitely let you know. I will keep you guys so posted on when I get my bills. I will let you know when it's gonna be.
So the 28,000 budget is just something that's been kind of arbitrary from year to year.
Yeah, we've never gotten a raise. It was always zero increase every single year.
That was part of the 10-year plan and to reduce the debt that you heard earlier before. So it was, the city lived very, very skinny. DPW, Mayville Police Department, Mayville Fire Department, really skinny. And yes, we got the debt where it should be, and the numbers where they should be. But now you have the suffering at the end of the
But
day.
that's where I don't think the 10-year plan
Right, no,
justified anything.
but it got the city where it needed to be, but it got the city into trouble also.
No, we're.
Or, yeah, we're paying for it. See, now the other thing is too, I don't know if you ever had, I don't remember, I was in council, a couple of years back. Did you ever have a replacement history or replacement
Yes,
schedule?
we
Like,
did, which was also termed.
just kind of like to the wayside? So, but you have those notes and you
And
can,
I do have.
okay, and we can have one, right, for the budget?
Yeah, but what happened with that 5-year plan is that 5-year plan went from say we bought by a plow truck for 100.
Sure.
Bring that touching for 5 years. So 5-year plan is tough because everything's gone up so much from year to year.
Right, oh, yeah.
So, I mean, if we did a plan, I would consider see a plan of maybe 2 years. I mean, you can get an idea, but we go up 5 years and the 5th year comes and we're like, whoa, now we're sitting here with.
Our equipment doesn't need to be more repairs every year than it did that year before.
I do believe we have to get back on a plan where we rotate our plow trucks and rotate our equipment
Exactly.
like we used to. Yeah. But for now, I absolutely have to get this stuff.
Any objections, any other comments from anyone else?
Gotta be fixed, you gotta keep running.
Right.
So if we have to make adjustments somewhere else, that's what we're gonna have to do, but if it's gotta be fixed, it's gotta be fixed, yeah.
I appreciate that. Anything else on that?
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for
Thank
sticking
you.
around.
Thank
I've been
you.
there.
Guys, thank you for what you're doing.
I've been there, but I didn't have the budget.
Thanks, and I appreciate it.
The funds.
Thank you, Jack.
Come on, finish that.
Yeah, it comes to the front.
Well,
I apologize.
No, you're thinking about it.
Probably should have done.
Comes in a job.
what?
We're not gonna present anymore. We're gonna come sit.
Well, based on the discussion from tonight, and then also just what we heard is, Joe had thought that it would be better just for me to come forward, and start talking about the services that I do.
Just, I want to introduce a little bit, but we're gonna relax and just talk and open ourselves up to have a discussion. But I do want you to meet Diane, and so that's where she's getting to. But I wanted to introduce you a little bit, Diane will explain what she does and what she provides for some communities right now, and I think a lot has to do with what I'm hearing tonight. Just a lot of things about what do we do? She's done it, she's been through it.
That's why we probably kind of shift gears after hearing more from what we had planned for.
Applying for the city administrator?
No, that's where let me explain. MSA.
I can recruit.
She'll tell you stories about that too. So MSA's been working with so many communities that this thing has come up all the time. It's been very consistent. Staffing. Our communities are worried about staffing. And so we started providing temporary staffing just to help communities get through bad spots in order to be able to just get through, because Mayville's gonna be here longer than any of us here. You're gonna be fine. But when we see it from an administration standpoint, we've seen it from a DPW standpoint, from an operator standpoint. And so we've had a lot of different people. We had one guy plowing snow this year because they lost 2 people in 1 week. And so you're not unique to this and what's been going on. But I wanted Diane to talk because she's sitting there texting me and is like, yeah, we put this replacement fund program together just for these communities and seen it. And in order to budget it out for year after year. She's seen it. So now if you could introduce and what you have, I think there's a lot of things that happened tonight. Which one do you want to see?
Oh, I guess we're right there.
All right.
So I've been with MSA just since September of 21. And before that, my entire career has been in the public sector. So for 26 years, I was in local government, counties and villages. I'm a community development specialist that I was brought on to be on the funding team. So I specialize in funding and in municipal administration. On this funding side of it, as Joe had kind of alluded to before, is that, you know, we have a team of 13 that are all in funding. And each of them kind of has a specialty. We've got somebody that's really, really good at assistance to firefighter grants. We've got a couple of people who are really good at safe and clean water. We've got some people who are really good at CDBG. I don't do any of those. I'm familiar with them, so I'm one that I identify when the community could apply to them, and then I get the special, you know, the other people that come in. But I keep a pulse on all new funding. So the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, so that's where I had mentioned about the one, the Protect grant. It's an acronym that might be a candidate for the funding issue you have. Again, I say might. But those are ones that I track from the funding side of it. And as I mentioned, I've been in local government for over 25 years. I started out in planning and zoning, and then moved on to government administration. And in that, before coming to MSA, I was the administrator for the Village of Bellevue. Before that, the Village of Porterville. Before that, I was the administrator of the Lincoln County Land Services Department. And then prior to that, I was a planner for Marathon County. And since coming to MSA, I actually pitched the idea of providing interim administration because I knew of a community that was going to be losing their administrator, and that was Sister Bay. So I served as interim administrator at Sister Bay for 7 months, and currently I'm in the city of Amro and the town of Freedom, and then I also did some interim community development planning stuff for the town of Ramon. So the interim administration is really about the day-to-day stuff, but then also the future. So sometimes I look at like for instance, when I was in Sister Bay, they had an administrator and then they had lost that administrator and they're in the process of recruiting. And so they had a 7-month gap where they needed someone to make sure that they didn't slide backwards. So in that case, and in Amro, they had administrators and I stepped in to keep them going. In the case of Freedom, they never had an administrator before, and that was a big learning curve. And so in that case, I describe it as trying to set the table. And that's the one where I'm one of those geeks. I was actually really interested in the audit, presentation, because almost everything that he brought up that is something that you need to address is what we're currently going through in the town of Freedom. Slightly different, but it is, some, bond proceeds that were not carried over to the following year, and you're not quite sure where they are. And in both, both cases, what I got out of it is, we're not talking about anything nefarious. It's just trying to get the books back in order. So we do that. And well, I mean, I'm not saying we get the books in order, but it's like we work on that, but actually we are also looking at bringing someone on who is a local government finance director, and prior to that, he was a comptroller for 25 years in the private sector. So we're bringing him on to MSA to also provide our clients some assistance, financial assistance, to help them get back if they had some bookkeeping issues. So we're bringing him on as well. So each community that I've come into, I have no idea what I'm in store for until I really get in there and get embedded within the community. And that's when I just kind of look for what are the opportunities and what are the challenges. And I would categorize them in these broad categories. One, the first thing I do is just start identifying funding that, based on the projects and based on my, as I get to learn about the community, I just put a list of funding opportunities together. Organizational development. I guess we're moving on, or did you flip your phone?
No, you can say them again, that's fine.
Organizational development, policy analysis and development, planning and economic development. There's been quite a bit of risk management and HR issues that I've worked through with these communities when I get in.
All right.
So one example here is Amro. They're in currently recruiting for an administrator, and actually we've got the second interview with the finalist candidate tomorrow. And in order to get more people into that position, it currently was identified as an administrator / treasurer. And it's hard to be those two things because one is very broad and futuristic and the other is very detailed. And that's usually doesn't exist in the same person. It's, you know, and one of them suffers typically. So we wanted to move that treasurer position off of the administrator and then had to find a suitable place for it. And then the other part that I discovered, you slipped your.
I do it every time I'm watching you, so I'm sorry.
Okay. And then they also had budgeted for a position for over 2 years, but they never identified what that position is because nobody could really agree on what it needed to be. And then lastly, they did have an organizational structure, so it was really hard to figure out, you know, for them, where do we want to go when they didn't know where they were. So first I created an organizational structure by sitting down with the employees and really getting to understand what the employees do currently and making the list of what they do. And then from there, then you can go to the next one. I created the long-range future organizational chart. So this was keeping in mind that we wanted to move that treasurer position off of the administrator. And then I ended up in talking to staff, we identified that vacant position that was budgeted but not filled really needed to be a deputy clerk treasurer. And the intent for that was for one, to maximize the segregation of duties. But then also to start preparing for succession planning because all of the staff that did those types of roles were all in the same, actually exactly the same age and talking about retirement. So we needed to start talking about how can we train somebody in advance before their retirement happens. So we created this long-range future organizational structure, and then we're currently implementing it where we've taken that treasurer role off of the administrator, we put it with another position, and now we're hiring for that deputy clerk, deputy treasurer. And now we actually got the first qualified candidate to apply because this is the actual third round that they did. And the first one resulted in 6 that did not have any experience. The second one resulted in no one, and then the third resulted in a candidate that has actually about similar experience as I do.
It sounds like a little bit tonight when you're talking about the candidates that you received so far and hoping to get better candidates. This is a stopgap for you to be able to build up and recruit and find the right person when the right time is there. As if you need someone temporarily, hey, great, and then we obviously step away as fast as we can, so.
Some of the other areas in AMRO that I was working on, I mentioned funding is first thing I do is identify any potential funding projects. And they had some projects that I felt, or a project that I felt qualified for congressionally directed spending. So I put in that application. And then I brought in Eric Thompson to work on a grant for stormwater management planning because they had a stormwater management issue, but they did not know that there were funds available. So we put in for that. And then I found some opportunity for them to put in for downtown and arts and culture, different projects like that for their downtown. And then the other area that I worked on in AMRO is under planning and economic development. They did have a capital improvement plan, so we are currently creating one with them. And then they had some in their commercial zoning district. There were some issues there that really were kind of left a very open door for some properties that were within residential districts open for anything. So I'm creating a new commercial zoning district to be more limiting and keep just uses that are more suitable for it. And so we think that'll help with the economic development. And then also their parking standards were pretty hefty and also kind of a hurdle for economic development. In Freedom, as I mentioned, I felt like I was sitting, I told Joe, texted him while I was sitting here listening to your audit report. I said, I felt like I was sitting in Freedom. I cannot believe how reflective what I heard tonight was of what we found in Freedom and are currently working through to correct with the accountant to make some budget amendments. And, you know, we had missing carryovers, and then to just get staff on understanding the process moving forward, and the board, because in that case, the board knew not what they did. And even the case where you had something that was, you know, you had spent money on, but you hadn't budgeted for it. I went out through our engineer at MSA for Freedom to budget, or excuse me, to get road projects bidded out, which they told me these are the roads we want to do. And we got phenomenal pricing on it. I went back to the board and said, if you have any more money budgeted, we should really get more projects done because this was superb pricing. Looked at the budget, they had absolutely nothing. budgeted for roads. They planned on doing them. They just didn't budget anything from it because they had some money from the previous 2 years ago that they hadn't spent but never carried over. So it's just, things like that we work through. And then some of the other areas in Freedom is that there's a lot of risk management. There were some conflicts of interest that I had to work through with the board. They had no personnel policies, they did not have an employee handbook, and they did not have any job descriptions, so I worked with them on creating those two things. I found that they were not following state statute when it came to bidding. So we put together a procurement policy, not only to make sure that we're following state statute, but so that staff know they don't, they were coming every little $200 expenditure and it would have to get approval because they just didn't know what they could spend. And then performance management, again, this is really part of risk management because if you do have to let employees go, you want to have that documentation. They didn't have that process in place, so we put it in place. And then ordinances, they were advertising for an administrator and getting ready to hire. And actually this is what made me get into the community is I live in the community and I was watching the meeting minutes. I'm like, I don't recall ever seeing a change in the form of government to an administrator government. So I looked through their ordinances and it didn't exist. So I needed to write an ordinance to authorize that position and transfer some of the roles to that position and then create the position and advertise it. So they're kind of doing it a little backwards. And then also when I came in there, I found out that there were several pending lawsuits and some litigation that they weren't aware needed to be turned over to their insurance counsel. So I was working through that kind of thing too. Then in Sister Bay, again, funding, like I said, every time I not only funding for projects like what Joe was talking about, but I also look at some of the operational funding. Like in the case of Sister Bay, getting them to apply for the annual DNR forestry grants. And that can really help out with the forestry operations, tree trimming, tree planting. Then there's, again, congressionally directed spending. I was able to get them some technical assistance from the Bay Lake RPC. So a couple of the funding on that side. Then again, on risk management, in that case, there's some planning and zoning administration that wasn't consistent. So it presented a risk if they were implementing it unequally. And
I already looked.
okay. And then again, there's some personnel issues. So we had to work through some personnel issues and create the employee handbook. There's some open meetings law issues. And so the part of this is like Joe said, it's like we come in and work with the community and I think of like Freedom, especially they didn't have an administrator. So I'm trying to set the table so that the next administrator coming in doesn't have as much to clean up. And because I would not want to walk into a community as my permanent job where I have to deal with these kind of things. It's challenging, a challenging way to start. In the case of Freedom, we actually are just going to be reviewing the candidates on Wednesday. I've been there since December and we currently have 6 candidates. And I would say 4 of them are well qualified and 2 of them, but we just, it's so just being able to get it to that stage of being able to get the candidates in. And I describe it as like being a parent versus being a grandparent. Is once I'm done, and if I'm done for a while, I can walk away. I'm not tied. So we come in, we do what we can to help you and then leave so that you can get the administrator in. And then, as I mentioned, we are looking at bringing in the finance director who has experience in finance in local government, again, as interim services to help.
This just didn't obviously go as planned. We wanted to be able to present to you and talk about the different services we have and introduce you more to MSA. And obviously the goal, I think, from the mayor, and I don't think he's here to be able to say it, but was to bring it to the council to talk about it, because I think we're not sure exactly what services you need or if you need any. We wanted to introduce you to Diane to get a feel for what's out there so you know what options are available. But I think from an engineering services and funding aspect, that was by far one of the bigger things that they thought would be an asset to the city of Mayville. Now,
A couple of things just popped into my head too, like the both the fire department and the public works department talking about vehicles and equipment. is one of the things that I'm familiar with from a past work is a vehicle operations maintenance fund. It's hard to get started. It takes a lot of getting it started, but once it goes, it's really nice. And I know that from what if I recall correctly, that you have a 35% fund balance when your policy is 25%. What I've done in local governments is that I have a policy both of, we've got to maintain a minimum of 25%. And then once we hit 30%, anything that's over that 30% goes straight into a capital fund for equipment. And that can kickstart a vehicle operations and maintenance fund. So that whatever that amount is between brings you from 30% up to 35, you could put that into a capital fund.
So your ability to help find funding is important. Huge key to making it attractive to hire your services.
Well, not,
And it's not just that.
Well, it's not
stuff we have to do anyway.
this is how it works. If I'm involved with the community, know what's going on, it's easier to find new funding. When I'm not here and just wait for you to call us, we don't know what's going on. And Diane mentioned she's been in communities and all of a sudden they start talking. It's like, well, yeah, we know what we did here and got them funding. A lot of our funding comes from me knowing what's going on and being aware of it, and then knowing what other communities have done already. And so it's not necessarily that that's what's attractive. The problem is that if I don't know what's going on in the city of Mayville, I couldn't tell you what to do. And we heard so much tonight, like the fire department said, well, let me tell you what this community did, and we'll introduce you to them. And then you can tell us your situation and see if we can get you that funds. But after that, I can't promise you that. It's just more of, here's an opportunity. And that's how it usually works. So it's not where it's needed, it's just how it works the best.
So to work best with your team, that means we need somebody here every day, 365 days a year.
Absolutely not. Oh, my goodness. And
No, I'm just asking you, what do we need to do?
I don't see the engineering offices being effective, and a lot of communities are going away from it. We hired a guy from Jefferson County, or the city of Jefferson, and they couldn't replace him. They couldn't find the engineer that had the skill set that's going on. It's more about when you have stuff going on, eventually people reach out and let you know. There is no yearly fee. There's no set amount of hours. It's just the better communication we have between MSA and the community, the better off you are. And it's not where we need to be there or we even get charged. And I'll tell you right now that there's a contract we put in place that who is authorized to give me work. And so when every board member calls me and asks me questions, there's no bill getting run up just because you're not authorized to give me work. So Michael is sitting there and you're not authorized, but you call me up and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. And I say, well, here, this, and this. We're not charging. But if it's your mayor or your clerk that tell me they're authorized to give me work and they ask me to do something, they're authorized to. But we want to be part of your community, but it's more of just, it happens over time and do it. I show you this, again, I didn't have this before, but this is Broadhead. I met them one day, they took me out, and I don't know if you've seen it, but they got one of the most beautiful waterways I've ever seen on the Sugar River. They got a dam and they got about 3 mile stretch of water that was dug out by hand in 1915. And it goes right to a little electric dam that used to make electricity for the community that's now abandoned. And I looked at it and they're telling me how they're cutting trails and they own all that green area. And they just said it. I said, how would you like to get paid for doing that work? And that's all I said to them. I said, there's a grant out there right now that you can use it, and then you can use it to get the money to do the other things because they wanted to build the covered bridge. That's how it started. And it's just because they showed it to me and showed us what they were doing on the weekends. And with that, they were able to generate the funds. Now the grant covered the ADA accessibility, so it only covered the bottom, but the covered bridge is what they're known for. They had to do that through their own donations. But at least they got the base done, and now they just finished the top. But that all started with a discussion and saying, okay, what's available out there and how do you use stewardship funds to get it?
Okay. It sounds like Diane has been through this a lot, and I feel like she could offer a lot. And with that being said, it definitely, if you guys wanted me to, I definitely would step in as maybe a utility deputy controller position, if I could work with Diane. I'm a utility accountant right now.
Okay.
But I feel like she would give us the structure we need, and that's what we need. I don't know, I just thought she could get started for us.
Well, just to explain on how with my services is each community has been different. In the case of Sister Bay, you know, they initially wanted me 20 hours a week, but that actually increased over time because then I was also doing planning and zoning for them as well. And their needs increased. But I actually, when I was in Sister Bay, I was there for 7 months, but I actually physically was there, I think 5 times, because I was able to do most of the stuff remote. In Amro, they want, you know, they contracted for me 10 to 15 hours a week, and I go to all of their city council meetings and I hold office hours on the days of city council meeting and then as needed. In Freedom, it's, you know, they initially said 20 hours, but then they wanted to increase that. So it's really based on the community's needs.
And what you're referring to there is understanding a little bit better, because there might be someone else at MSA that's better at the financial aspects, where her background's more administration, that could help with the training.
We just need to get the training and the structure and then we're good.
And resources.
If somebody leaves, we can come in and take a write-up.
Because I do kind of, I describe it as, you know, really that broader stuff. And like in the case of Freedom is, you know, I was able to identify, well, I think what they, you know, I think what happened here is that you didn't carry over the bond proceeds and, you know, you didn't budget for this and, you know, the ARPA funds went over here. But I didn't know how to, you know, I kind of know broadly how to fix it, but I'm bringing somebody else in to actually do the detail work because that I'm not familiar with. But I know the person that we're talking about that we've interviewed twice now, and we're just basically negotiating with him now. He's the one who was the finance director and a comptroller, is that he has done training of others, so he's experienced in actually training people.
And that's only the guy.
And that's a very common question, actually, because we've had it with DPW is, hey, just help us train our next person, because we're finding people inexperienced that we'd like to get the resources around them and knowing where to ask. That's good enough.
So what I'm hearing is you can help us stitch all of this together a little better.
We probably can. If not, we definitely know the resources to do it, and we just want to give you those resources. So it probably has a lot to do with MSA, but there's some things that obviously, like you said, we know people in the industry that can help out as well. And you'll get through this. I mean, it's temporary, but it's definitely a benefit to it.
I think that's a really good presentation to cover a lot of ground. Any other questions, comments from anyone else?
The one thing the mayor said is he was hoping to be forwarded to the council where we can again bring a scope of work or something together to talk about it. But this is, like I said, it's been a long night for you, to be fair. And honestly, I'm just bringing it up to you to introduce ourselves too. So I guess if that's the next step you'd like to take, I'm not sure exactly the direction of what the scope would be, but we at least try and look into it more, maybe meet with your staff to present to your council.
I think at this point, I would like to, unless there's more presentation, move on to the next agenda item so that we can have a conversation about this before we jump to throwing this to a council meeting.
But again, to be fair, the next step would be, as you say, the council, but I think it's fair for basically an understanding from staff too, so that we can be a little bit more equipped on what we think we can help. Well, we heard a lot tonight, but I guess I would not want to lose momentum of at least asking some more questions to figure out exactly where we think we can help out and where we don't have to, because we're really just picking this up. And that's obviously no cost to you, but I don't want to see a not look into it, at least from a standpoint of getting more staff involvement, if that's fair.
I understand what you're saying, but I mean, I think we haven't even had a chance to have a conversation among the committee regarding any of this. I think we're not even at a point where we can discuss scope of work, because I don't think that we've had a chance to really discuss it. I didn't even know this was what presentation was on the agenda.
And that's why I asked the question at the beginning, because when we heard it in all the discussion, I was asking that question as well. Again, I'm glad, like I said, I don't know exactly how the rest of the board feels, but I guess my next step would be just to have a little bit more internal discussion to come back now that you at least heard this part of it. But that wouldn't be any time, it would be taking some time with your staff.
I think, yes, I think Joe makes a good point there. So I guess the question I have is, I think that we need to do some internal discussion on, so I don't, does that mean we table this, or we just bring it up again next month, or? how do we-
Well, whatever you want, that would probably fall under item 4. You guys can decide where you want to do with this. We can table it. Under number 4 to next committee, if you want to come back and discuss what they presented and what you'd like to do with next steps.
I'll make a motion to table it to next, finance committee. Would be my recommendation.
I'll second that. We gotta really identify our needs and there's so much going on, as you heard. Yeah, then we have to identify that and then
Do you want to do this only for the finance committee or finance committee of the whole? Or to the council?
I believe finance committee.
well,
may
we
have went
would talk about
executive
it.
Of the whole
Yeah.
for the next
Okay.
few months. Okay.
The
All right.
finance committee poll is
Is the whole.
basically
It's
the council.
the council. Is it
So, I don't know what, there's no difference really between the two, but I guess I would know, and nobody's brought it up, but some kind of idea of a cost estimate,
Yeah.
you know, because then we have to think about it. You know, that's gotta be, I know that there's many benefits, but we still need to know what we're gonna be putting out.
We can definitely come back and discuss some of the finances, but just realize you don't call, you don't pay. There's no retainer, there's no cost. It's just more of as needed on-call services, except we know when
I
there's
get,
work.
I
We'll
get
talk
that,
about it.
I get that from your presentation, but I still don't know what it is when we call,
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
okay?
That's,
That's
I
my
will,
point.
I can bring that back with the other information and just take that to the next level of presentation. And hopefully with a night that isn't so bad, or so busy like this.
It's not usually like this.
Is it, this is a long one, isn't it?
Yeah, this is unusual.
I was gonna
Well,
ask
I've
you,
got
you said
two
no.
presentations in one night.
We saw that on the agenda, I was a little surprised, but that's okay. Well, we made the best of it.
Okay, so
So we had, yeah, so we had a table,
seconded,
I second.
Some
So we
discussion.
find
then we can
identify our
vote.
needs. Yeah, let's take that a little.
Actually, we can just do a voice vote. We
Yeah,
don't
okay.
need to go through roll.
All in favor?
aye,
I
thank you.
Opposed?
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Item 5, review the possible action on civic system upgrade.
That's one that's just, been tabled. I did not receive any new information. I know Glenn was, in contact with them, I thought, or was going to be for further information on the upgrade. Nicole, I don't know if you've been working with Civic at all,
Yeah, we haven't, anything right now.
so no real new update.
Nothing new.
What is it, was it for the cost of the server, or just counting on them to give?
No, just the upgrade, the additional modules, if there was any cost involved, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I would make a motion to table.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have discuss, item 7, discuss a possible action recommendation from planning commission to provide sanitary and water services from road right of way for, we have, I'm gonna butcher how to pronounce this. Yeah, to the River Knoll Industrial Park.
And then this is the stuff
You are here regarding that.
Yes.
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah. So my name is Nick Chuffy, Uncle Engineering. So this originally happened, well, this is regarding lot 2. So it's one of the 1 acre lots that was created in the River Knoll Industrial Park on Hilltop Drive. As we didn't,
As part of the purchase agreement, there was language added into the purchase agreement that the city would be providing stormwater services to the property. That was something the former mayor and the realtor, they worked on the purchase agreement. We weren't aware of it. Courtney was not aware of it until after the fact when the Tom Lekowitz came forward and said, hey, as part of my purchase agreement, this is stated in that the city is going to provide it. It was discussed, I think we had meetings for November, December of last year when this first came up. That there was two discussions at plan commission meeting regarding it. I didn't feel at that time that it was Courtney's responsibility and it should be Courtney's her budget to cover that. So it was discussed that it would be coming out of capital funds or general funds to pay for the services to be installed, and that the city would use the contractor that Mr. Lekowitz had hired for the rest of the work. So there should be meeting minutes in there, and then they broke down estimate from Town and Country Engineering regarding, or Town and Country Underground regarding the work that would be done. So they'd be installing the sewer and water up to the right of way and then restoring the street. And then I had talked to the mayor and he had wanted it to go before finance. I don't know if then that needs to go before common council. I know it's under the 25,000 threshold, I think, but
got us both here.
yeah.
I'm just reading the minutes of December. On the planning commission in December 12th, where is that specifically talking about this chunk of land?
Well, I think it was brought up in November, and then in December, they decided to discuss it for all of those 1 acre lots, all 5 of them. If they were going to maintain the same situation for those lots. So it's probably more the November one where they discussed it in particular regarding the Lekowitz property.
So item 6 on November, is that what we're talking about? I'm having trouble figuring.
So this is December, actually, December number 7. So in November, they tabled it for further discussion, and then they discussed it and that the city would cover the costs, was the motion that was made.
But I'm not, where? I'm lost, where is the person saying the motion is made then?
So I guess it was discussed, it was decided that the city would work with the developer to cover costs of sanitary and water services that fall within the road right of way. As stated in the realtor agreement.
But where's that at?
So that is on December 7 for the December meeting. Well, we don't.
There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.
What are you missing?
I printed off what was in the email.
Just the both sides of the, well, sorry, this is gonna be for the double sided, you know? Like from
I think it's like that's not, I'm sorry.
December, November, yeah, it might have been, but yeah,
It might have been my copier.
that's all right.
I know.
Roger, you were on the planning commission back then, right?
No, that would have been Bob Smith.
Okay. We could use him right now.
And John Gwynn.
Right?
What is the issue here?
So, as part of the purchase agreement, it was stated in there, that they would provide the sewers and water services to the lot line. They didn't want to put it on Courtney's budget, because she didn't have anything budgeted for it, and she wasn't consulted on it. So they were going to take it out of general, or capital improvements, I think is what they were looking to do. To cover the costs. To the lot line. To the lot line, as part of the purchase agreement, yes.
And that was voted on and approved, Nick?
That was,
I can read it out if you'd like.
The old Back Street place, what?
no, this was lot 2 of the one newly created lots out there.
The River Knoll Industrial Park, the 1 acre lot on the middle.
Oh. I thought I was looking at something that said School Street.
From
I'd read number 7, so you can.
So, discussion with possible action regarding providing services to lots on the River Knoll Industrial Park. Discussion was had regarding the land sale and providing the services to the lot line for the newly sold parcels. Smith brought up that when the industrial park was initially created, there was a hidden place to provide incentives to attract businesses to develop there. One of the incentives was for the city to pay for the services from the mainline utility to the lot line of the proposed development. The TID used to pay for the incentive has since ended. Thomas Lewinsky, a property owner, was in attendance to discuss his plan to develop one of the recently created 1 acre lots. He was looking to get clarification on what the city would provide in terms of service laterals to his property. It was decided that the city would work with the developer to cover the costs of the sanitary and water services that fall within the road right of way. They would also leave this in the realtor agreements for the remaining 4 1 acre lots. No action was taken as the city will cover the cost of the service to the lot lines. If I understand that correctly, we've already agreed to be paid for it.
Yeah, exactly, out of that one, and then all the other lots that are there now.
Just because it did,
And it's, yeah,
it still leaves us.
closed.
When you do it for one, but you don't do it for the other.
That's,
Is that,
But we don't have that option because we're already stated in there that we agreed to do it for all of them. That's the way I see it anyway.
be more with the bots.
So there'd be 4 remaining on that section of Hilltop.
So where did this idea come up with to be charged to Courtney's budget?
It was discussed and they weren't going to charge it to Courtney's budget just because she was unaware of it and didn't have room or didn't have it budgeted for.
Kind of like us right now, we're unaware of this.
What's the timing that this needs to be done in?
Well, the Courtney was provided with the breakdown last month, so it's the first meeting we could get it on. But talk with Lee from Town and Country, he's hoping to start after the 4th. He said he could start on the stuff on on the site itself and save the stuff for the right of way till later, but his cost might change a little bit because it'll be a little more inconvenient for him, so.
So what I got here is total state under 8180. Total water 7,600, then add 6,200, is it?
For the street restoration.
Okay. So the 780 and the $6,200, that's in front of the property, restoring what's been ripped up.
The road, correct.
What did that amount come to, Ken?
I'm not getting it for you right now.
Okay, sorry.
I believe it comes out to.
It's like 22,839, and then we are voting yes on the other 4 properties too. That's, you know, you're looking at $100,000 of saying yes to a tip that was closed. And hence that are tied here tonight, that other decisions were made earlier.
Yeah, but if we want, if we want to attract someone, we're gonna have to make, like, what other provisions have we made to attract?
So as part of that bid too, there was if you brought so much in assessed value to the property, you could purchase it for $1 per acre. That is what happened with the Leckwitz property that was approved for purchase. They were able to purchase the 2.5 acres for $2.50. So that was the other incentive that was part of that TID district also.
So we're giving it up 2 ways?
They would still have to meet the. I know previously with Leckwitz, he did not meet that the threshold to get that, so he ended up buying that parcel for, I think, 27.5 is what it was sold for. But he was looking then to get the utilities. That was stated in the purchase agreement, so.
Okay, so that means someone else who buys another property, if they fall within whatever, we're selling that land for $2, plus we're giving 22,000.
And all this stuff can be worked out in the developer's agreement. I mean.
I mean, it's not like that we don't want to give some kind of incentive, but come on, you know. That's, you don't look on Facebook and this guy's selling something and you go there and, you know, he wants $20,000 and you walk away giving him $5. I don't know.
Well, it's already put into the purchaser's contract, so we
I know.
have to, you have to
I know,
what's in there
I'm just.
legally, and then you gotta look at the legal aspect.
Can I interject? Is that purchase agreement or developer's agreement just on Leckwitz? It's not on all of them, correct?
Nobody else has purchased the rest of them.
Okay.
But if they do, they're gonna look.
Well, it's good, we're setting precedents right here.
Yeah.
So whatever you vote on tonight, you're just gonna you might as well just go, okay, next buyer,
But we don't have,
look at these minutes.
but we don't have to agree to sell it to them for $27,000 either.
No,
Yeah, isn't there a provision that, or is that provision gone? Where you can buy this property for $1 an acre?
that's gone.
That's gone, but they were still enacting that for the Hawkers development that took place, so.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so future ones, they're paying full.
And I know.
They're paying full boat for the property.
And I know the mayor has talked, I think we've talked to Ellers too, about potentially bringing that back, the TID district. For incentives for that, so then there would have to be a new district established for that, with new incentives.
You know, yeah, I think we need to give some more thought to this before we.
So Nick, did you go to the planning commission about this like recently? Or
We discussed it in November and December of last year.
okay. I'm wondering if this shouldn't go right back to the planning commission, seeing that they're the ones that made these deals.
Well, they approved it. So, should, oh, should we? See, attorney?
I don't recall approving this. First I've seen of it, so that's why I'm wondering.
Well, say
Is it approved or is it recommended by the?
it's in the minutes.
Is approved or recommended?
But was it approved through finance,
It's a-
Roger?
Planning, it never escalated past the planning commission.
Correct. So it's never been here.
Okay, so whatever comes through across that comes to the council and the council has to approve it, is that correct?
I would imagine
Or does-
that should be the case. I don't believe, I mean, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I don't believe planning commission necessarily has the authority to make financial
They
decisions.
can make the
on behalf of the
recommendation
council. I think they can
to
recommend.
approve.
But I don't think we have the recommendation for them to approve this dollar amount or this cost. I think that's the part that's missing for me. Should there be another step between December and now at the planning commission before it came to us, or should this come straight to us?
I think there may have been a procedural issue on where it needed to go. And I think the problem they're running into now is they agreed to do that. They have a developer's agreement and there's someone waiting for work. So I believe that is why, I mean, I can't put words in Mayor Glynn's mouth. He's not here, but I believe that is why it is on tonight's agenda. I don't have the background in this.
Okay, so again, this Letkowitz, they paid $27,000 for this property.
Yes, I believe that was the agreed purchase.
And
27.5.
And what are they putting on it?
He is going to be doing an auto detailing and
Okay.
resale place, is what he's looking to do.
All right, not hard to forget.
Making a procedural or incorrect recommendation, because I'm not intimately familiar with this project. Based on what I've seen to date, what I've heard here, I think we have to.
Why did it take a half a year to get here though? This should have been done months ago.
Yeah, well.
I know,
Well, this is dated May 17th. But it's just now showing up here to us.
yeah, I did see the estimate until last month when Courtney forwarded it on, so.
Yeah. Put that a little bit off the spot here.
So, if we're. So it's not a TID anymore. So if we give this stuff away, we're not gonna reap the benefits of having a TID. So a TID would have to be created before we get the benefits from it, correct? Am I correct? Because there's no TID in existence for this property or the next, or the next four.
I know that has been discussed about going forward as an incentive, but as part of the purchase agreement, when Leckwood bought the property, it stated in there that sewer and water services were going to be provided.
discussed with who?
I don't know who was all part of that. We didn't find out until he brought it for site plan review that that was part of the agreement and he asked us about it.
So is Letkowitz, is he? I haven't been over there. I mean, is anything built there yet?
No. He's wanting to break ground and Town and Country is wanting to break ground. Like I said, Lee wants to start after the 4th with the on-site stuff. If he has to wait on the stuff in the right of way, then he can do that.
Yeah,
But
well, I
his
mean,
cost, he said, might change a little bit.
well, they would start with site preparation. Would they go straight to digging sewer and water?
I don't know what his schedule is for
We're
work.
pretty quick. They get that buried under the ground before they can,
Yeah,
put a foundation, that kind of stuff.
there's gonna be no.
I would like time to go back in the minutes and look at this more thoroughly. It seems like we're kicking the can down the road here.
And and again, you know, like Mike brought up. You know, this was on the table for 6 months and now we're put on the spot, you know, here it is Monday and they want to start next Monday. You know,
I think we need to go back and find out from who was on the planning commission back then.
Well, is that gonna, Kim, I think that's a fair comment, but my question is that gonna change anything?
Probably not, but it'd give me a little more insight.
John Quinn, Andy Shoemaker, Bob Smith, John Gable, Gene Briggs, Rod Fleischer, and Merle Fowler.
And we have none of those folks here to support this or tell us about it, or,
that's right, yeah,
so
Not one.
without that, I'm not comfortable approving that.
yeah, I agree. So,
Nick, personally, myself, I need to know more because this is all new to me tonight.
Just
I'm
as a side note, I will be going to planning commission to do the minutes moving here forward, so Nick can act in the capacity of an engineer, and then I can make sure things are being moved forward to committee or council as necessary. I think that's been a miss in the process because they have not had a clerk at the planning commission in, it sounds like years.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, go ahead.
So this next step would go to council, correct? Discuss with possible action and recommendation from the planning commission.
It could, unless you want to table it. So it's up to you guys. We could put it on council to give the time to get that information. It's how you would like to proceed.
but if we table it, does it get tabled to the council meeting?
It depends
It
what
would
you
be
choose.
tabled
Well, you
till
could
the
recommend, well, you can recommend to council or table to the next finance meeting.
And ultimately, council can table it.
Correct.
So I make a motion to move it forward to council. To discuss our next council meeting and possible action.
Because that would give us, I will second that, and I have a discussion.
That'll give us some time and that'll put us closer to their start date. To help.
Because we can hopefully have a little more data at the next council meeting.
The next
And-
council meeting, too.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. So get ready.
He wanted to start July 4th or?
He was thinking maybe, what, attendance? He might not start till the week of the 10th. But like I said, he'd be starting on the on-site stuff then and would hold off on the right-of-way stuff until.
So it's not, I guess it's, we're not here. I mean, we gotta think of us, not the contractor. That that wants to start on a certain date.
I'm not,
So we have
I'm
to,
not worried about that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, hey, this was promised.
yeah,
Let's, put the money where the mouth is. You know, show up to the dance. And here we are.
Mike, could you give me the names of who did this back then? Who was all part of that?
The planning commission
Yeah,
says members present, John Gwynn, Andy Shoemaker, Bob Smith, John Gable, Gene Frings, Brock Fleischer, and Merlin Callhammer. That's on the the 12th, or December 12th, planning commission meeting.
Okay, so I made a motion.
I second.
You second that. You wanted some discussion? Or you want to take a vote?
Any other discussion? No other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? No opposition, the motion carries. May I have a motion for adjournment?
So,
second,
All in favor?
I,
Carries.
Thank you, Nick.
Did you want me to stick around for something engineering?
I have your report, that's up to you. Thanks. Definitely good.
what are we gonna do with the utilities? We don't have a utility report.
She always sends it to me. So,
But she was here, wasn't she?
Nicole was here.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Hold the
sorry.
order.
Yeah, it was important, not-
Okay,
Okay.
and then this is just the regular, so, Alderperson Abbott,
All right,
Alderperson Olson,
here,
present, Alderperson Tillman.
Here.
Thank you.
okay. Approval of the minutes for May 22nd. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any citizen comments? Well, they're all in bed. Monthly utilities report.
All right, Courtney has water updates. Asphalt specialists are finishing their patch repairs. The tear down for well number 4 has begun. Grant funding for 2022 lead service replacements will close out on June 30th. In total, $1,516,185.38 in 100% principal forgiveness grant funding was used to pay for all private lead service replacement. Wastewater updates. After our DNR laboratory audit last month, our auditor nominated Mike Kelly for Lab of the Year through the DNR. Additionally, utilities assisted the DNR and other city departments with river cleanup from an oil spill in the city on June 1st and on June 5th. Bills are being submitted for all times and materials spent.
Thank you. Monthly engineering and planning report.
Okay, so 231 Breckenridge, this is Matthew Schellinger. He's looking to have a martial arts studio and a detached garage. So they went through the processes, rezoning and everything like that. So he is in the process of submitting for his conditional use permit to do that. I know he has some building modifications to do that. To bring everything up to code. And it's on the next plan commission meeting for the conditional use on the 10th. 2023 street and utility improvements. It's been awarded to Crew Check. Contracts have been sent out for signatures. We are coordinating with the contractor. We're going to be looking at a pre-con meeting at the end of July. They're looking to start in August. So this is for the sewer water work on Alley Street and then the water main installation out by Metalcraft. They would be, like I said, they would be starting in August. We'll have to work around the county highway B work, because that's gonna be starting in September. 2023 PMP project, so they're going to be, milling and repaving parts of Breckenridge. So from Clark to west of Emmer Street and then Keith. Northern Asphalt was awarded that contract, and they are looking to start in early July on that. Also noted in there, talked to the highway commissioner, like I said, County Highway B is getting repaved all the way from 28 to, can't remember exactly how far they're going on that, but that's going to be starting in September. And I think they plan on finishing that in October. So Hilltop Drive development, this was the Tom Slekowitz project. They're looking to get started here pretty soon. Next week is what I was given for start date. So we'll have to keep an eye on the, once approved, we'll keep an eye on the sewer water services. Clark Street development has been in discussion for several months with Planning Commission. They're looking to break off 5 acres on the south end of the Mayville Healthcare parcel and potentially do a residential development there. So, like I said, that's still in talks at Planning Commission.
Where was it?
So this is between the water tower and the care facility. That empty area, they're looking at maybe breaking that off and putting some residential houses in there. And then Leona Street, that was discussed for a couple months in Plan Commission. They are looking to move forward on maybe vacating the north end of the Leona Street right away. That is an agenda item for discussion with the county council, or will be for the meeting on the 10th also. Then we also have Al Schillinger, who's looking at maybe a potential development on Hilltop Drive for one of the 1 acre lots to do a seed storage facility. So he was looking to see if he had enough room for what he plans to do for one of those lots. I have to follow up with him and see if he's going to be on the Plan Commission agenda for next month. It was on for this month, but he didn't have everything ready, so he tabled it. And then Rob Bro, the building inspector, brought up some areas around William Street. They're zoned RM multifamily, but they have single houses on them. There was one case that just came up recently that somebody wanted to build a garage, but because of the zoning district it was in, it had some very large setbacks that it wouldn't allow them to do that. It sounded like they found, I can't remember exactly what they did with that, but they were able to work something out so that that property owner could then build a detached garage. Any questions or?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
DPW.
When Jack was here, he said there really wasn't anything he needed to report, so.
Park report.
John Wild is not able to be here tonight. So he did send me his report in advance. For buildings, he said the rentals of all the shelters and facilities has continued to be very good again this year, with the pavilion not having an open weekend until into the fall. With soccer, baseball, and softball in full swing, all of our facilities are used every night of the week. We've been working on freshening up the inside of some of the bathrooms. We also plan on fixing the outside of the Malt House concession stand and Ziegler's Scores booth once baseball, soccer, and softball slows down some. These exteriors are greatly in need of it. We've had more glass block windows broken up at Fireman's Field. Those need to be repaired. We also have a slide at Thyler Park that's been cracked. A new slide is going to be ordered at just under $2,800. Grounds report. We have not had as much mowing this year with the dry weather. Dan's been doing an amazing job keeping the grounds looking great along with everyone else's help. We've been trying to keep our downtown looking nice with watering the flowers every day, sometimes twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. We also clean the sidewalks and gutters once a week. The Rotary is going to be donating 8 bikes to be placed in the parks for people to use free of charge. There will be 4 by Fireman's Field and 4 by the Gold Star Trailhead. There will be trackers on the bike, so it'll be hard to steal them. The volleyball courts on Lions Point Park were redone last week. Thanks to DPW for their help, they look great. Senior Center. Cards and bingo continue to be popular all week long at the center. The seniors asked if I could come to their monthly meeting in July and talk about the parks and how the city and the senior center in many different ways. Update on Parks project. The sheds by the kayaks is about 95% done, and we just need to finish the landscaping. The poles for Ziegler lights are supposed to be in the next few weeks, and that project can be completed. We're in the final planning stages of the Rotary pickleball courts up by Fireman's Field. The Rotary is just waiting to hear if they receive a grant. When they get confirmation, he'll be presenting the project to the park board and then council for approval. The park board is looking at updating the park's open space plan. Mike Kurtz has been collecting information on this and presenting findings to the park board monthly. And that is Tom's report.
Thank you, John. Number 8, items of discussion, possible action. Discuss with possible action, no mow may.
And Kim, this was one you had put on.
I think it's something we should consider. And I did talk to Jack about this. It's something that we've never implemented in the city of Mayville. But Jack said there are problem areas more so than people just not wanting to mow in May. It's usually something that happens year round. But I would like to see it in the city of Mayville be recognized.
For what?
To be
What?
just to be.
Yeah, for what?
Who's asking?
Mike.
Oh. To help our butterflies and bees survive?
So by recognized, you mean maybe put on a website or something,
I'd be happy with that.
brought up in May council meeting?
I did
prior
put
to-
out to the clerk's list to see if any other municipalities handle this. I didn't get any examples of permits. I have heard of municipalities that you can come and get a permit if you would like to be included in no mow May. So that helps avoid some of the problem areas and they can still enforce on the ordinance. Most of them honestly just do a mayoral proclamation for the month of May where they don't enforce that section of the ordinance, and it's.
You realize what the city's gonna look like?
Those are just what some other people have.
Yeah, the city of Milwaukee had nothing but headaches with that this year. Because after about 2 weeks, it starts to look very raggedy. I personally think this no mow May is, it's a pipe dream for somebody. Sorry.
I also, just to chime in, I mean, I know people think that it's great for the butterflies, but I mean, dandelions aren't typically, it's not a native flower that they typically feed on. And my experience, when I worked in Wauwatosa, I did actually handle grass complaints and things like that. And the whole no mow thing and the natural landscape piece of it, which is always the argument that I got, was typically a bunch of rundown lawns. I know there are some places that permit that type of thing. If you submit a like a landscape plan and you provide, documentation of what you're planting and why, how you're going to maintain it, as opposed to just letting the grass grow. I have people in my neighborhood who do not mow their lawns. And like 2 years ago, I had waist-high thistles next door for 2 months. And the problem is that 2 months of, or all May of no grass, I mean, half of these lawns are not grass. They're full of thistle and all kinds of other garbage. And it does get to look pretty run down. Just my opinion.
From the standpoint of providing for butterflies.
And bees, honeybees.
Yeah, so there are butterfly gardens that people plant that are specific, plant things that are specific for butterflies. And flowers for bees. I don't think not mowing my lawn is gonna help the bees 1 iota. I don't have any dandelions in my yard anyway, so I kill them all with chemicals.
I mow my lawn probably a couple times a week, especially if it rains. And I'll tell you right now, I've got more bumblebees in my yard than you can shake a stick at, so the bumblebees go for the flowers. The flowers I put in flower beds. That's where the bees go. Grass has nothing to do with that, but people that let their lawns go for a full month, it makes the city look like trash.
Doesn't sound like we have a lot of interest in pursuing this.
I guess not.
Just, is there a motion?
You don't have to take any action on it if you don't want to.
Well, if there's no motion and no second, then that's where.
That. No motion.
No motion.
No
second.
action. Okay.
Okay. Move on to item 9, adjournment.
So, wait a minute, I'm not on your committee.
Nope.
Yeah, I'll second that at 9:46 p.m.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.